failures, including negligence and mismanagement, among others, when 34 workers died and 28 others were injured on site. Simelane says the National Home Builders Registration Council and the personnel that was responsible for the project are responsible for the disaster. She says a more thorough pre-registration process will now be in place.
The home builders and developers will be required to undergo more stringent training and grading before being registered with the NHBRC. And Section 26 provides that a system and requirements will be prescribed for the registration of a home builder and a developer, proving a grade that reflects the level of competence.
The release of the report comes as President Cyril Ramaphosa signed the Housing Consumer Protection Act into law, outlining stricter registration and training requirements for home builders. Simelane says those who do not comply with the act will face consequences.
The new law also provides for more transgression and penalties on both administrative and substantive non-compliance as outlined in terms of Section 63 and 64 of the Act. The Minister is empowered to prescribe an even stiffer penalty amount threshold that the entity council may impose in instances of administrative non-compliance.
Justice Minister Mamluko Kubai says she wants to understand why, despite legislative interventions, it's not having the desired impact on lessening the scourge of gender-based violence. Kubai and Police Minister Senzo Mchunu will call for urgent meetings on Monday to thresh out the shortcomings, along with the Ministers of Education, Health, Social Development and Women and Youth. Kubai says the rape case of a 7-year-old girl in Matatiele and the acquittal of Pastor Timothy Omotosho after an 8-year rape and human trafficking trial have once again displaced the public's distrust in the justice system. Lindsay Dentlinka has more.
3 years since amendments were made to 3 laws to give impetus to the prosecution of GBV cases, Justice Minister Mameloko Kubai says introspection is necessary to determine where the shortcomings still lie. She says the mothers of at least 12 alleged victims in the Timothy Omotoso case contacted her after she demanded answers from the prosecuting authority after the judge let him off the hook.
Are we doing enough at the justice cluster? And be transparent to the nation in terms of where the gaps are and what we are going to do with it. And we hope we'll be able to address those.
Kubai says the criminal justice system has to be more victim-centric.
We're hearing the voices of women and children rising instead of going down after the president had committed that we'll deal with GBV. And the issue is for us to look at where are the problems. Why are we not making the impact that we should be making, that we have committed to?
Kubai has urged Parliament to finalise processes to establish the first National Council on Gender-Based Violence, with the Portfolio Committee having previously expressed concerns about the lack of budget for it. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News.
The cross-examination of a police detective in the Jocelyn Smith trial is set to continue today. The captain is being questioned about the confession statement he took from accused number 2, Stefano van Ryn. Van Ryn and co-accused Jacqueline Apollos claim they were tortured by police to admit their involvement in the child's disappearance. Carlo Peterson has more.
Police Detective Captain Philip Siakui will continue being cross-examined by Defence Attorney Nobahle Mkabai today. Siakui took Stefano van Ryn's confession statement in March last year. Van Ryn and Jacqueline Apollos claim they were tortured by police to implicate Killy Smith as the mastermind behind Jocelyn's disappearance. Siakui yesterday denied having any knowledge of the accused being tortured. When questioned about why he continued taking Van Ryn's statement while the accused appeared to be sleeping, the detective told the court he did not notice the accused's eyes were closed. Siakui will take the stand again today when the trial resumes. Carlo Peterson, Eyewitness News, Saldanha Bay.
And a whistleblower has told U.S. senators that tech giant Meta undermined national security in order to build an $18 billion business in China. The company's former employee, Sarah Wayne Williams, told a congressional hearing that executives decided to provide the Chinese Communist Party with access to the data of Meta users, including that of Americans. But Meta has disputed this, saying Wayne Williams' testimony is riddled with false claims. The company says its CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, has been public about an interest in offering its services in China, but it does not operate there. Gold Gold is trading at $3,118.75 an ounce. The rand is at 19.24 to the dollar, 24.81 to the pound, 21.19 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $64.80 a barrel.
And in the traffic, we've got some delays on the N1 North approaching the Baklou interchange. That's due to roadworks taking place along this route right after Rivonia Road. There's also queuing traffic on the N3 North between Van Buren Road and the Gilulis interchange.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with scattered showers and thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 23 and 24 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. Human Settlements Minister Thembisi Melani has promised there will be strict regulations for builders and developers in the construction sector to prevent any more deadly disasters.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
7:02
Live
on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856
92.7
and 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Good morning, it's 7 minutes past 9. Welcome to the Clement Manyathela show. I'm Tshidi Madia, head of politics at EWN, but for now, I'm here playing caretaker. I'll be keeping you company while Clement is away. I think the team has put together a solid show for you today. It's Thursday, so we'll bring you the Hanging Out feature and, of course, the Thursday dialogue. Between 10 and 11, we'll be hanging out with poet, author, activist, and yes, she is a sibling to the late Barbara Masekela. I'll be joined in studio by Mayor Barbara Masekela. We'll discuss her literary works, her upbringing, and perspectives on South Africa today between 11 and 12. It's the dialogue, and you know what? Of course we'll discuss politics. I mean, why not? If you have the head of politics at EWN in studio, of course you use it to discuss the politics. So we'll be chatting about the GNU. What is the future of the government of national unity? Where is it going? And of course, the first hour is, as per usual, all yours. You set the pace, you dictate the agenda, you spark the conversation. I definitely want to talk about the Pirates versus MC Algers game last night. That violence. And it's not just the fans. It's the players too that I thought were problematic. Not only that, but I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a low-level taxi ward play in Gauteng. Did you know that at least 30 people have died in these skirmishes just over 1 month, just last month? So I want to talk about some of the violence that we have been seeing. Our lines are open to you throughout the show, so feel free to hit us up on 011 883 0702. Voice notes and WhatsApps can be sent to 072 702 1702.
7:02
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
So I watch soccer, definitely watch soccer, but I'm not like a diehard fan. And I don't get teams' names correct unless you're Real Madrid and sometimes Sundowns or sometimes Pirates. So my knowledge is quite limited, but I do know that I am concerned about some things that we have been seeing. So I know that the first leg of the CAF Champions League quarterfinal has been happening, so that's what I want to talk about. That first, I think it's important to congratulate, yes, Sundowns, Stellenbosch, right, FC, as well as Pirates, because they've advanced towards the semis. But last night's game at Orlando Stadium, which ended, I think, on a 0-0, meaning Pirates goes through because MC Algers from Algeria needed to win by 2 goals in order to move forward. But that was not to be. And the end result was that violence that we saw. I didn't watch the game, but I was speaking to Michael Pedro, who was doing the sports, and he raised concerns about not only the fans, but the players' behavior, saying that at every turn, the response by players themselves to decisions taken by the referees that didn't go their way elicited some sort of a response, and that was problematic. And it's different from last week's game with Sundowns, isn't it? Where they played Esperance. There was an issue around the fans. There was an issue about how they left the Gautrain, from my reading. I saw some of the tweets and the visuals about what was happening at the stadium. What is your reading of that situation? We all know about hooliganism, and how in the past a lot of European teams used to be found wanting as far as this was concerned. But I believe that it's by and large been stamped out. I hear that at the moment issues are around teams in South America, on this continent. I was trying to figure out, is it just a North African team's problem that we have? Is it that they just misbehave? What ought to be done? What do you want to see happening with regards to the soccer matches? What is CAF expected to do, right? Is it a question of sanctions? Do you ban fans from soccer matches? Do you fine the clubs themselves? Is it a question of law enforcement? Because I did also see some commentary that there just wasn't sufficient security and that the police were also overwhelmed. What is your reading of what happened yesterday? Is it a culture thing? Mawande Mateza from also EWN Sports saying to me, it's the issue of ultra culture that is definitely a thing with teams from Northern Africa. And that seems to be part and parcel of that problem that we have. I just wanted your reading on that. The violence makes me uncomfortable. That if things don't go your way, that's how you behave. I enjoy, mind you, the rivalry, even between South Africa and some of the West African teams. I definitely enjoy the back and forth that happens between South Africa and Nigeria. But if it had to resort to what we've seen at the stadiums, what would people say? I'm very uncomfortable with what I've been seeing at the end of these matches. And the fact that, there's a term even for ultra culture almost feels like it's been allowed to continue. What did the European leagues do in order to bring it to an end? What's successful there that we aren't considering that we need to consider? So I do want to have that conversation. I want your thoughts on that one. 011-883-0702. That's where you can call in to share your thoughts about what you think needs to happen. Is it just a North African crisis on this continent? And you can also send in voice notes or WhatsApps. That number is 072-702-1702.
Join us.
Let's walk the talk.
This is 702.
All right, so I am taking your voice notes. I'm trying to make sense of that particular issue. I'm not a big soccer fundi. I even went to my brother and I asked him, and my brother said to me, what tends to happen is that North African teams are also bullies. And that's something that it seems like a general consensus people have, saying North African teams have always been bullies, even during the era. Yeah, Coach Pizzo Simani used to get annoyed when he was coach dealing with the North African teams. Is that the thing? Is it a question of they undermine teams down south? Is that it? What's your view? Send your voice notes through.
My sister, CAF needs to stand up now and deal with the North African teams. This intolerance that they have and subtle racism. I call it subtle racism because seemingly they don't deem themselves weak enough to be defeated by the teams that are on the south. We've seen it with Sundowns. We've now experienced it with Pirates as well. So CAF needs to sanction these teams. It can't be that we are saying this is an attitude of South African teams. We've never had such confrontations before with Southern African teams. So CAF needs to take a stand up and sanction these North African teams. Until such time there are penalties and punishment for these teams, this is going to continue.
Tshidi, good morning. On the violence at Orlando Pirates point, I'm not exonerating my team. However, if you go on Twitter, you'll find a video of Coach Pizzo where he refers to a common trend among the North African teams and their violence and not wanting to accept defeat. They think they own the CAF Championship. 2, the Sundowns game had similar violence after the game, the recent one. So it's not just the Pirates game. It's these chaps, when they come, they do not want to accept defeat. X here. Thanks.
Morning, 702. I honestly think it is definitely a culture thing because we have rivals, Sundowns against Chiefs, Pirates against Sundowns, but we don't act like this. We just go home, we lost, we cry, new day, new game. It's definitely a culture thing, and I don't want to put the R word out there. So yeah, I think maybe there's just a cultural difference, and yeah, they're just all losers. Kings or not?
Tshidi, good morning. Yeah, on the football, particularly the CAF Champions League, we've got a problem of the Northern Africans, and then I will say this in terms of the regions. Because they seem to have this sense of entitlement. I don't know who told them that they are the best and then they are entitled to win every match and every tournament they participate in. If you look at history, they've been doing this, be it at the club level or national team level. Whenever decisions are not going their way, they will obviously react and show that by frustration, as it happened in the match against Mamelodi Sundowns, even when you look at the match against Stellenbosch down in Cape Town, and now the latest one, including against Orlando Pirates yesterday. So I think we need to call a spade here. The problem or the elephant in the room here is the North African players, including their fans. They've got sense of entitlement, and that is wrong. There's no spirit of sportsmanship, and then they've demonstrated that, be it at the club level or national team level, and it's wrong, it's bad, it needs to be condemned. Joseph Rosley.
Thank you, Joseph, and all those WhatsApps, please keep them coming. So it's a question of spirit of sportsmanship, right? True sportsmanship. And yes, I'm taking the note of the R word, as one of the voice notes said. Is it about that? Is it about undermining teams that come from South Africa? I'll come back to those voice notes. I also want to bring in another topic that I'd like your thoughts on. I don't know if, and I know it's a risk of entering into this GNU conversation before we formally discuss its future a little bit later on. But I must tell you, I remain, I think, somewhat amused, but a little bit scared too, I'll be honest, when I watch how competitive the GNU partners are. When the Government of National Unity first came together, a lot of us thought, oh, this is good. They'll be competitive. They will work well for us as citizens. But what you actually see are a heck of a lot of spats on social media. I don't know if you saw Solly Malatsi and Khusela Diko. So one is the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, that's Solly Malatsi. The other is Parliament's Communications Portfolio Committee Chair, Khusela Diko. They recently clashed over the SABC bill. So they're at it again. So if you listen to 702 Breakfast with Bongani Pingwa yesterday, Khusela Diko came on and she was arguing that the minister is determined to be an illegal delinquent. I think that's what she called him. She accused him of failing to follow proper processes and the law. Diko says the minister's bid to devolve power away from SITA, that's the State Information Technology Agency, that's the current SPAT, to various departments, allowing them to have the right to procure their own services, IT services, is unlawful. She's also referred to this as anti-transformation. The minister, on his part, insists this is a way to deal with SITA's operational weaknesses. He says Diko's claims are false. And then he says that, when it comes to the issue of regulations, which is really, from my understanding, the nub of their disagreement, is that you must give the departments, that the law does give the departments the freedom to procure services outside of SITA. Minister Solly Malatsi joins us now on the line to try and explain his part on all of this. Solly, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702. Let's start with what necessitated all of this for you. You speak about operational weaknesses from SITA's perspective. What are the concerns that you have?
Good morning, Tshidi, and to your listeners. At the root of this is genuinely a request to help government departments to be able to meet their ICT needs at a quicker turnaround time, at a much more affordable rate, and also through a reliable service across government, whether be it at national government department level or provincial government. There's been persistent frustration with the quality of services that government department and government spheres are getting from SITA, and those deficiencies have impacted government's ability to also meet its digital transformation aspirations. So one of the provisions which are available by law are two options. One being that government departments can make applications to whoever the Minister of Communications is at a given time and seek exemptions from the existing prescripts in order to procure outside. The complication with that
that, though, is that you leave that process to the subjective views of one individual, that being, a minister of communications. There's also another avenue. That avenue is through a regulation that can be introduced that can help empower departments to have the freedom to say, when a government department is able to present a business case, Tshidi, and that business case must be within the prescripts of existing procurement laws and be able to prove to SITA that instead of what you are offering, at the cost that you are offering, at the turnaround that you are offering, we are able to procure it elsewhere at a lower cost and at a quicker turnaround time. That is the key of this. And all of this is not contrary to what the propaganda seems to suggest, a devolution of powers, is to say that departments have to have this sort of freedom in order to competitively seek resources that can help them meet their aspirations. If you were to do a survey, Tshidi, of the government ministers and across all GNU parties, you will understand the depth of the frustration that some of the inefficiencies at SITA has impacted their ability to be able to do their job. So this is not outside the law. This fear that there is somehow acting outside of the prescripts of the law is just to make a scarecrow argument that does not have any facts around it. We have done consultation of all the executive authorities as the SITA Act imposes, and ultimately secured the concurrence of the Minister of Finance, who is obligated by the SITA Act when there is a regulation to give his concurrence, which is his ultimate support. And the Minister of Finance have done that. And Tshidi, if there is any legal delinquency, I mean, would all of these other steps also have endorsed the delinquency that's being alluded to? No, it is simply based on a fundamental misunderstanding or a deliberate quest to just distort the facts.
The part where they label it as anti-transformation, your response to that? I mean, if you said other departments, other ministers, particularly from Treasury, is also aligned with this, then one would question, why is it perceived to be anti-transformation? Do you feel like that's also a campaign, or do you recognize where that objection stems from?
No, I mean, look, Tshidi, I think also the climate that we are in also informs some of the behavior that we are seeing. And again, that tag is not grounded on the facts. So I'll choose to stick to the facts, and that the facts indicate that this is to empower. One of the weaknesses in the current system is that governments feel that they are not able to achieve the level of efficiency that they could be achieving because of the restriction to solely procure from SITA. And this will provide an avenue that will help improve that. It is within the law. And if, Tshidi, there is an argument that it is outside, there are channels that can be pursued where there is an indication that somehow a minister is acting effusively outside of the bounds of the law. And that hasn't been taken up. And that just shows that this is not an argument about legal compliance or not. It's a political campaign.
And you keep saying that you have made it about GNU battles. You're suggesting from that statement yesterday that you said that Khusela Diko is auditioning for a job. She's campaigning to take over the job, supposedly, of communication minister. That to me suggests that you'll be out of your job soon. Are you looking to quit as communications minister, Solly?
Look, individually, no, the DA will make a pronouncement once we've completed all the consultations. I think as you would have followed the conversations that's going on, there are bilateral discussions that will be taking place, and any discussion about our future in this government will be determined by the outcome of those discussions.
Is Solly Malatsi though ready to vacate office?
When the DA makes the decision, as a leader within the DA, we'll inform our views in the DA, and we will go with whatever decision suits the Democratic Alliance.
Whatever decision suits the Democratic Alliance. Thank you so much. That's Minister of Communications and Digital Technology, Solly Malatsi, saying that a lot of the claims being made against him, as far as SITA is concerned, are unfounded. He says that they are political. He speaks about the political climate and campaigning and how the the communications portfolio chair is campaigning for his job. But they actually do agree on what the issues are at SITA, if you think about it. Parliament has been looking at the state of, looking at the State Information Technology Agency. Technology is outdated, security is weak, there's mismanagement that they've complained about. It's also been placed at the heart of crippling many other departments. So when you are frustrated with Home Affairs, the South African Police Services, and Human Settlements, a lot of those issues sometimes stem from what's gone wrong or what is going wrong at SITA. 011 883 0702 072 702 1702 if you want to weigh in on this. Of course, we're also speaking about the violence we've been seeing at the soccer games, where some people are accusing specifically North African teams of being problematic in their behavior, the so-called ultra culture. That's what they say it is. Some saying that it actually, those teams undermine South African teams. Is that the perception? But most importantly, what should CAF be doing about this?
702
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
Good morning, our CD. Nice talking to you. To Charles Manyeka in Riverside. We are being disrespected. These guys don't respect us. Imagine if we, South African friends, were to travel to Algeria or Egypt and behave like that. Obviously, no one in their right mind will go to a foreign country and act like that, because they know these consequences. In South Africa, they know our cops, our law enforcement can be bribed, and we are too nice, man. Too nice.
Tshidi, the North African team, they are used to dominance in Africa, and it seems like it's taking a different shape. These North Africans, they think they are Europeans. They think they are superior than us. You can see the stats speaks for themselves. The South African football has grown. We don't know where it came from, but it just seems like it has grown. So right now they cannot take that pressure. They can't take it anymore. They did it even with Stellenbosch. They were so violent there. Violence was just an order of the day. So it wasn't a surprise with Pirates game. Someone said to me that they're going to do it when they did it with Sundowns. They said they're going to do it in Orlando. They did exactly with an extreme that side. So I really think SAFA has to lodge a complaint with CAF and do something about this, because we cannot be treated like animals by North African people. Thank you. Sviso.
Morning, our city. Ulu here. I think we need to make this thing very clear that this is a North African problem. You will never see this happen in South Africa. It does get to a bit of skirmishes here and there, but it's a North African problem. How is it possible that Sundowns game ended in a similar way? Pirates game ends in a similar way. When we are in their countries, we get very hostile treatment. It's been a case for North Africans for a very long time. I used to work in a hotel back in 2010 in Durban, and I think it was Algeria. Yeah, Algeria was staying in our hotel. They lost and they trashed the whole floor. The whole floor was trashed.
But my question goes back to, what is the Confederation of African Football meant to do about this? I don't know a lot about the football fraternity. I know relatively very little. But I am concerned. And I'm also worried about whether or not then, if we limit it to football in terms of behavior, or does it go beyond that as a concern? I'm very worried about that. There's a WhatsApp here that's come through that says that, and again, it's the same language. The problem is with the Northern African teams, they like to bully other teams and referees. Why are they being allowed to get away with it? Why isn't there anything being done? When people say the Pitso Mosimane era was also that, what was done to quell them then? They're allowed just to continue and you walk away. Coaches express frustrations and nothing happens. I don't understand that. I said, I don't understand the world of football. I'm also looking supposedly for some education, if you may, to understand why is it that it persists? What is it that the European federations did there, the authorities that side, that made it come to an end? What did they do to halt it that we are not doing on this continent? What is the failure? Even if it is a superiority complex that they have, the rules must come into play. There must be some form of rules, right, that force behavioral change, surely, right? No? It's 9:30. Sfiso has your headlines. I'll come back and hopefully you'll tell me what's the way forward. Sfiso's got your headlines.
Thanks, Tshidi. Good morning. Opposition parties in the city of Ekurhuleni are calling for a review of the metro's billing system after it was manipulated to charge households and businesses much less for electricity. The tempering of the metro's automated meter reading system led to 2 billion rand in revenue losses in the first quarter of the current financial year. This is because thousands of households had their outstanding balances reduced while others had their arrears completely wiped out. Lawyers for disgraced Bishop Stephen Zondo want his trial to restart from scratch and for 4 years' worth of evidence to be scrapped. The leader of the Rivers of Living Water is accused of the rape and sexual assault of his congregants and staff members. The state has closed off its case and it's now Zondo's turn to make his. And the governor of Nigeria's Borno State has warned that jihadist group Boko Haram is making a comeback after its fighters staged a series of attacks and seized control of some parts of the northeastern state. Bagana Zuluman called for more military assistance for soldiers fighting the insurgency. And according to the BBC, the Nigerian government has downplayed the governor's fears, saying security in the country has improved in the last 18 months. Those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 10 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Well, at this stage, things not looking too bad. Things have settled down pretty nicely across 702 land. Just look out for slow-moving traffic, though, if you are leaving the Joburg CBD. This is on Main Reef Road, approaching Church Street. Also, in the Midrand area, traffic is a bit sluggish. This is on the N1 southbound between Sam Rand and New Road. Look out for those faulty traffic lights in Kyalami at the R55 and Main. Traffic lights also not working in 4 ways at Witkoppen and SITA. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Africa Milani.
Weekday mornings,
4 to 6.
In that reversal of his decision yesterday, he's now gone back to a blanket 10% for everyone except China. China is sitting on 125%. What will that mean?
That would mean significantly higher costs for certain goods from China for US consumers. It would also mean a likely escalation in this trade war from China's side. They've already announced an 84% tariff on US goods into China as a result of the initial announcement.
Charles Adams is an economics lecturer at the University of the Western Cape.
Africa Milani.
4 to 6 on 702.
Dear Journal, trying to be an adult, day 3215. Checked my bank statements. Payday me and rest of the month me have drastically different budgets. Urgently need to discuss this with Payday me, but I can't seem to get hold of her. She's always out on the jaw.
Recently removed from the family payroll. Get covered at pineapple.co.za. It's like 570 Rand a month, so it's 100% the insurance for you. Underwritten by Old Mutual Alternative Risk Transfer Insurer Limited, licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP. Premiums are risk profile dependent.
Make every day awesome when you get the new Samsung Galaxy A56 5G from Vodacom, Mzansi's fastest 5G network. Get yours today on a 1.4 gig rate core plan for only 429 Rand per month over 36 months. Enhance your deal when you add 49 Rand extra per month and get the Samsung Galaxy Tab A9. Available in-store and online. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom.
World Sports Betting puts the excitement of Vegas in the palm of your hand. Bet on thousands of markets daily or try your luck on hundreds of games and you could become an instant millionaire. Register today at wsb.co.za and get your first deposit matched up to a massive 20,000 Rand. World Sports Betting. Bet with the best. Licensed by Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. No person under the age of 18 permitted to gamble. NRGP toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008. Winners know when to stop.
Managing your workforce shouldn't be complicated. That's why businesses choose Onacy, a proudly South African cloud-based payroll and HR solution. From payroll and e-recruitment to performance management and self-service tools, we streamline the way businesses handle their people. Scalable, secure, and always online, our system evolves with your needs because your workforce deserves the best. Switch to Onacy and experience payroll and HR done right. Visit onacy.com today.
This Freedom Month, 702 invites you to a soulful celebration of democracy and music. Join us for an exclusive afternoon of world-class live jazz, gourmet dining, and connection. Curated by Jazz and Beyond's Nothemba Madumo, Wednesday, 30th April, at the historic Sanctuary Mandela, Houghton. With performances by Fea Faku, Herbie Twaedi, and Ziza Maftik, plus a global concert live stream from Abu Dhabi. Celebrate the freedom of jazz on International Jazz Day with 702 and Jazz and Beyond. Powered by Omoda. Limited seats available. Book now at ticketmaster.co.za.
Join us.
Let's walk the talk.
This is 702.
It's 9:36. The Clement Manyathela shows Tshidi Madia in for Clement Manyathela. We are discussing various issues. It's the open line. We spoke just before the headlines to Solly Malatsi, Communications Minister, about his attempt to devolve powers from SITA. There's a lot of issues around SITA as far as operations are concerned. I see a tweet from Kingmaker, a post on X saying, SITA reports to Malatsi's department. If SITA is a weakness, that's for him to deal with instead of undermining the role that SITA must play. Where's the cabinet resolution that endorses Solly to do what is currently embarking on? There is a clash at play, if you think about it, between Solly Malatsi and the Communications Portfolio Committee Chair, Khusela Diko. The minister has dismissed us all, saying it's a political ploy, it's a campaign, and so on and so forth. What is your take? I'm going to play you a few voice notes also on this issue.
Tshidi, if the issue is SITA, Tshidi, then why isn't Solly, instead of wanting to privatize and do away with SITA, why doesn't he just capacitate it and fix the leadership issues at SITA and make sure that it's working like a well-oiled machine rather than to privatize it and do away with it completely? Why is it that everything that they want to do as the DA ministers must be private? Why don't you just fix state enterprises and make them work? Why do you constantly have to privatize things when you are in a position of power to fix it? So fix it. Don't want to privatize it and do away with the job because you don't want to fix the problem.
Thank you so much for that. I kept Karabo here for a little bit because yes, he delivered the traffic, but he had very strong views about the CAF. We are also speaking about the violence that we saw. I'm worried about taxi violence, so we will be speaking to MEC Kidiboni Diadetlabela in just a few. But Karabo, you had a view. So people say that what we saw in the violence with the North African teams, that's the culture. You're saying it's a culture of football.
It's a norm. It's a norm across the world because we see these kind of behavior in South America where a team loses and then the fans just start fighting and the players also join in, and it's just a whole big chaos. So I'm not really surprised when it comes to soccer because you don't see it in other sports like rugby. Rugby is more of a violent sport, but then the fans and the players after that, there's just calm and sportsmanship. So with this one specifically, particularly with the CAF, I feel always the northern countries, yes, have always been hostile to the southern countries.
All right.
I don't know why, but it's just the way it is.
It's not acceptable. Thank you so much. That's Karabo Charlie from Traffic. Kola in Santon, you also wanted to quickly weigh in on what we've been seeing on our soccer pitches.
Hi, Tshidi. Yeah, 2 quick points. Look, it's just Groundhog Day with the North African teams, unfortunately. This is nothing new. And it's just their political stance on Africa as a whole. I mean, you can see, which countries out of the African Union or pulled out. And even a lot of North African players, and with any sport for that matter, when they win international accolades, it's almost like it's difficult for them to acknowledge that they are from Africa. But the second point, which for me is the most important point, was I was actually quite appalled with how SAPS handled this. I mean, this is the first line of defense in our country. And, they're the ones with the weapons, but they were the ones being shoved around by soccer players from another country. And I just found that quite interesting that they could not assert their force and their presence and command respect from these guys. Because I tell you now, if a South African team went to Algeria and did the exact same thing, I promise you now, it wouldn't be long before the entire team is probably detained, for God knows how long. So I actually think we need a full report from SAPS as to why they failed to contain that situation. I mean, the fact that they were there, indicates that, the authorities had a whiff that things
They
could
should
go
have learned
south.
from
But
Sundowns. They should have learned from Stellenbosch.
Exactly.
I did raise the issue of inadequate security earlier on, because that's something I also don't understand. Why is it that we're not rising to the occasion? Kola, thank you so much. That's Kola out in sentencing. Actually, we do need a report from the police. I don't think that I disagree with that, because they're there and they're overwhelmed. How does that work? We must find better ways to deal with it. I'm not satisfied at all of us saying, oh, that's how it is. I want the answer. Is it sanctions? Is it fines? What must law enforcement do? I want a way that we can curb this, so that next time that they are in this country, we don't see what we saw with Sundowns, with Stellenbosch, and with Pirates.
For more about 702,
go to primemediaplus.com.
So earlier I mentioned that I think a low-level war is back at play in the taxi industry. The clashes have claimed at least the lives of 30 people last month alone. That's 30 people who've died in March due to the conflict of the taxi industry. This is an admission our Premier Panyaza Lesufi made at the policing summit on Tuesday. The day before he made that admission, 3 marshals were gunned down in Soweto. Is it just about the routes? Is it about permits? Why is it always violence when it comes to our taxis? I know that a few days ago, this particular show spoke on this issue around taxis. I know Clement spoke to Tshidi Madia from the National Taxi Association. And I found it really worrying when he spoke about the attitude of violence in the industry. Before I bring on the MEC, I just want you to listen to this quickly.
The rules of engagements are such that, at some point you need to agree to disagree, and you end up finding solutions to the problems. I mean, no problem, can be unsurmountable. I mean, this country's problems, rather, were resolved, using a dialogue. So this actually showed us as people that the only best way of resolving our differences can be, utilizing dialogue, because what currently is gripping the country is unacceptable, and it does not even serve the purpose, because at the end of it all, they will still have to come back, sit down and discuss a way forward. So there is no way that this, acts of violence would not beget other acts of violence. So it is just...
There's going to be a retaliation.
There's going to be a retaliation, It's going to be a retaliation. And it's just unfortunate that the industry is being characterized by this cloud of violence. And this has been happening from days in memoriam. Yeah. And this really seeks serious intervention.
That's the voices there of Tshidi Madia from the National Taxi Association and Clement Manyathela, who hosts the show. And it's interesting, and he's not wrong, that violence begets violence. And that's how many of us view and relate to the taxi industry, that this is an industry that is violent. It's an industry that many suggest that government is scared to actually tackle and to bring in line and to manage it even better. I am joined on the line now by Tshidi Madia, MEC for Roads and Transport in the province. MEC, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702.
Tshidi Dumela, and good morning to 702 listeners.
MEC, before I even put questions to you, I want you to listen to what Tshidi Madia said about what is the problem. He spoke about violence, but he then spoke about government's role in what has gone wrong. So before I ask you to have your piece, I'd just like you to listen to a little bit of what Theo said about what is going wrong in the industry at the moment.
Let me clarify, Brathio. So are you saying that there are some people, even in government, who issue out licenses that are fraudulent and not in line with the law to some of the taxi associations, and that's why you would end up fighting among each other, because you've got a license, you've been operating since a long time ago, and then here's someone else who says, well, I also have a permit to operate here, but it's actually fraudulent.
You've just nailed it, my brother. That's exactly what I'm saying.
So which is it? Is it the transport department that's responsible for approving these licenses?
Obviously, yes. Obviously, it's within that department.
MEC, the The guest there, Theo Malele, places a lot of blame to what's going wrong, in part to the transport department, in part to government. Your assessment, what is the heart of the issue? Is it permits? Is it unlawful? Is it fight over routes? What's the heart of what's happening? Why are 30 people dead in our province due to taxi violence?
Tshidi, you just said a profound statement. Why are we not rising to the equation? And I mean, I've been in this responsibility for 2.5 years, and the story is the same. And we have acknowledged the mishaps of the past, and that there were duplications on some of the routes, not all of them. There has been challenges of operating licenses in the province. And in responding to that, we created a platform where we work closely with the industry itself, not only them and other public transport service providers like e-hailers, scholar transport, and bus operators. We have a committee that sits every Friday from 6 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock. The scheduled issues, scheduled items, dealing with issue by issue and resolving. And we're getting there. What surprises me, if indeed that they are fighting, the dispute is about routes, payments, why are they still continuing when there's a platform? We have set aside time to deal with conflicts. There's a platform where everybody who is in conflict must come there and discuss. And the department has set aside time. We're correcting things. We're correcting the mishaps of the mistakes of the. They are part of us in resolving that. But they continue to kill each other. Is it true that in Mawiga, in the north of Pretoria, where they just killed each other this week, are they killing each other for the permit and the dispute? And why would you continue to fight and kill each other when you know there's a process that is to correct the challenges that you are faced with? We've called for camp. We've been discussing for quite some time, Tshidi, with them. We now understand, and I think it's time we as government make a decision on behalf of the silenced, the victims that are continuing to be bullied, harassed on a daily basis by these unscrupulous men who really do not care about the business itself and believe that being in taxi industry, it's a fundraising event. It's angering us because we have extended ourselves. We are sitting with them every week on a Friday to resolve issues, and they still continue to kill each other. I do not believe, from where I'm sitting, I might be subjective, but this is criminality, and government needs to act. For quite some time, government has been allowing. We are a public participatory democracy. We consult extensively. We've done it. I'm at a point where I said to Premier, we've been consulting. I've been here for 2.5 years. These guys see me almost every week. We sit on their issues. We have put systems now in place. They are agreeing, they're giving input. Why are they still fighting? Why are they still killing each other? This is criminality. And maybe it's time we call things by their name.
It's been time. From the very beginning, we should have called it what it is. You speak about how long this has happened, and you say you've been there for 2.5 years. MEC, I was a child when taxis were not allowed in Leondale because they were fighting. Correct. I know the late Khabisi Msunkutu used to actually stop taxis from functioning. Ismail Vadi has done this, MEC, many MECs. So clearly the fact that we keep coming back to the cycle where you then have to make threats, where you have to take extraordinary measures, tells you that something is wrong. And you now keep saying, well, we must call it what it is. It's criminality. That suggests to me that government is not doing enough in arresting the perpetrators because somebody is pulling a trigger. Somebody killed the marshals. So if you recognize it's criminality and the platform that you have isn't being utilized, why aren't we reinforcing the police, hunting people down, arresting people, if that's what we recognize is the problem?
That's what we have elevated the issue. By the way, since January, we've been in discussions with law enforcement agencies in our province, including the state security, that we think, because they too categorized as a threat in a high risk. And we think we're at a point where we can no longer sit back, and no one is arrested, by the way, ever since the killings started in our province on taxi violence. No one has been arrested. No one, there's no case. And we
How's
need
that
to
normal?
start dealing with it. It's not normal.
How's that
Yesterday
okay?
we met with the women in the industry, just to draw strength, but also, I'm a product of women's struggles. And when it was tough with apartheid, it's women who stood up against this. Let me tell you what's happening. Tata Malele is correct. There's bullying and harassment. Let me tell you, when there's a conflict like this, ordinary members to put money on the table. Ordinary members are charged 800 rands per week. Every day there's money that they must put in someone's pocket. They are even afraid to talk about it. And my predecessors has closed ranks. And 2 months, 3 months, there's a lull. They come to the table. They want to negotiate. They will stop fighting. And then they don't stop. And I think this time we must do things differently. And that's why we're announcing our intention to close the ranks as per Section 91 of NLTA, just to make sure that we don't continue having this. The war must stop. The guns must be silenced. Our intention is to close for 6 months. And in that 6 months, we are overhauling the whole thing. The operating license, they are saying to us there's duplications. They don't own those routes. They are licensed for about 7 years to operate, and they must come again and again to come and renew them. So they don't owe them. And that's why I say government must really be tough and take stance. I've been very consultative and giving them hope. Also, they being part of resolving this matter and coming up with suggestions and solutions to the challenges. But they are not using the platform effectively. They are continuing to kill each other, especially in Wata and Nandue. I think it's silliness, it's criminality, and we need to overhaul the whole system and withdraw all the operating licenses as they are and start afresh.
Just before I let you go, I do know you have a program in Soweto where at least 3 marshals were killed this week. MEC, you're closing the taxi ranks. Which ones are going to be affected, and when are you actually closing them down in order to start working on the overhaul?
So the decision is we are going to close operations where there are conflicts. The conflicts are in Johannesburg, mainly in Wata and Nandue. There's also conflicts in Ekurhuleni as well as in the West Rand. And we are firm, will not back down. Unfortunately for them, we've been giving them an opportunity. My predecessors did it, but we must do it differently now, is to withdraw all the operating license and get into a new regime and put proper systems in place so that we also get to know who's in our routes. You should hear the things that ordinary members who are afraid to come out and raise the challenges they're faced with. There's people who will enter, who don't even have permits to operate in those routes, and they'll just arrive. So this mother yesterday was narrating the story that there's taxis that are not even licensed, they're not part of our associations, but they come into the rank. You all go back and bonaba again, and then they go and rank. Luna, you sit and watch them, and that can happen for the whole year. That is harassment, that is bullying, and it must stop. And that's why women in the industry are saying we need to close, and this time close with a purpose that will help us have a permanent solution.
MEC, just before I let you go, one very quickly. What about commuters? They'll be worried about transport when you close down ranks.
Correct. Yeah. One of the things that we are doing, remember, for us to implement Section 91, we need to be consultative, and amongst others is to consult also affected parties. So we spoke with other public transport operators, like e-hailers, as well as the bus industry and scholar transport people, and many other people who are licensed to shuttle individuals, that we will have to, technically the team will have to look into how then do we provide this important service to the people, including the metros and the municipalities. So it's a process. Once you intend to institute Section 91, you must first talk to the planning authority, which is municipalities. And I'm happy that City of Joburg is on board. Both MMC of Transport and MMC of Community Safety are with us on this.
Okay.
So obviously the team will technically look into the issue.
All right.
And how do we then accredit those service providers to go into communities. And
All right.
most importantly, ensure that there's law enforcement on the ground. So
All
we met with different law enforcement agencies last night.
Mm. All right, I think that's
going to roll out once we institute Section 91.
All right, thank you so much, MEC. That's MEC Kidiboni Diale Tabela, who is the Gauteng MEC for Roads and Transport, saying that they need to do things differently. We are saying you need to curb the crime. People should not be dying on our roads.
Craving a taste of Thailand? At Simply Asia, we could be sending you and 3 friends on a dream trip.
Spend just 200 Rand and you might be soaking up the sun with 3 friends in Thailand. Taste the Thai at Simply Asia and win your ticket. Plus, every purchase supports Gift of the Givers to help South Africans in need.
Cleansing.
Caring.
Connecting. That's what Songkran is all about. T's and C's apply. Competition ends May 31st.
Make soccer season legendary with Hollywood Bets. Aziz Shagay, Let's Play takes your disky passion to the next dimension. Light up the games with your best bet slip and stand a chance to win your share of 2 million Rand in prizes, including a brand new Toyota Fortuner. Bet a minimum of 10 Rand on any soccer fixture to qualify. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. Hollywood Bets supports responsible gambling. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counselling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp HELP to 076 675 0710.
They say, on the day of his birth, he drove his mother home, and he once escaped a female shark attack using nothing but his charm. And he drives a tank. Discover the GWM Tank 300, now with a 2.4-liter turbo diesel. From $7,968 per month. Visit gwm.coza for T's and C's and to book a test drive. The new Tank 300 diesel. Go with more. Go with GWM.
702 was in conversation with Altron,
celebrating 60 years of solving real-world problems
and discussing their plans to rebuild
and re-energize Johannesburg through partnership
and collaboration.
So our business is really what we call a platform and an IT services business. And what we do for our customers essentially is we use technology either on our platforms or in a bespoke way, working with our customers to really help to operate their digital infrastructure, to optimize their digital infrastructure, and really to transform their digital infrastructure. And within our this business, we've got a number of businesses. Netstar, probably one that you might be familiar with, which is really actually celebrated its 30 years.
Visit Altron.com for more info.
Altron, a technology industry leader
since 1965.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
We are taking your calls, voice notes, views. We're speaking about taxi violence at the moment. Fill in 4 ways. I'm going to ask you to keep it a little bit tight. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Tshidi. I think the biggest problem as well, what you have already mentioned about the duplication of the licenses. The main problem are the police as well. Most of the police, you talk about the subs, you talk about the metro police, they've got taxes. And the taxes are not in their names. It is... an example would be like, say, I've got a license to operate. I don't have money to buy a taxi. I'll get Tshidi taxi to operate under my name, and I'll pay Tshidi 600 Rand or 700 Rand a week. And somebody will have about 10 taxis like that. That's how they will survive. So there's just nowhere else the police will be able to stop the violence, unfortunately.
Thank you so much. That's filling forwards. Yes, the authorities are complicit. That's often what you find to be the problem. Here's some of your voice notes.
Morning, Tshidi. More regarding to the North African teams. This is because CAF doesn't have or is not giving enough sanctions and fines. The Club World Cup is coming. They wouldn't even dare do that to European teams after the game. They would be asking for T-shirts. They wouldn't even do that. So why are they doing that? Because there's no sanctions, there's no fines or consequences. That's why they're doing that.
Thank you so much. And with that, I bring the end to the open, and it's about consequences. Even with the taxi violence we see, it's consequences. What are they? 30 people dead in 1 month. No one has been arrested. Nothing's happened. That's what the MEC has said. How is that okay? How is that normal? Gauteng, South Africa, 30 people. Lives lost on the roads. Nothing's happened due to violence. Something.
Make Easter extra with Checkers. Bry SA's favorites. Enjoy hot cross everything and discover over 1,000 treats for your hunt. Plus, save on Coca-Cola Original Taste Less Sugar Cold Drink, 2 litre, 2 for 45 Rand. Lindt Chocolate Cornets, 200 grams for 139.99. And Parmalat Cheddar or Gouda Cheese, 850 grams, 2 for 249 Rand. Valid until 21 April at Checkers, Checkers Hyper or shop on 6060.
My family's struggling with snotty noses and phlegmy coughs.
Oh no! Have you tried ACC?
ACC 600 is a convenient one-a-day effervescent tablet from 14 years of age, or now also in a no water needed fruity flavored sherbet-like granules that dissolve in your mouth. Ideal for the on-the-go adult. Ask for ACC 600 effervescent or oral powder at your nearest pharmacy to get rid of the snotties and Flemings. And trust, if it doesn't say ACC, it's not ACC.
When the road says, hey, let's go for a ride, what do? Do you let the moment of exploration pass you by? Or do you take to the tarmac like there's no tomorrow? If you're a Jetor driver, you do. And if not, well, you can. By getting into a bold new Jetor dashing from 4,999 per month or an adventurous Jetor X70 Plus from 5,199 per month. Book a test drive at jetor.coza. T's and C's apply. Jetor. Drive your future.
From juggling a million roles at once to keeping customer satisfaction on point, what makes one SME stand out above the rest? This week, we get to find out on 702 Small Business Awards, brought to you by MTN, announces the finalists on 702 Breakfast with Bongani Pingwa from 6 a.m. and 702 Drive with John Perlman between 3 p.m. Visit primediaplus.com to find out more about the finalists in the 702 Small Business Awards, brought to you by MTN. T's and C's apply.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. Opposition parties in the city of Ekurhuleni are calling for a review of the metro's billing system after it was manipulated to charge households and businesses much less for electricity. The tempering of the metro's automated meter reading system led to 2 billion rand in revenue losses in the first quarter of the current financial year. This is because thousands of households had their outstanding balances reduced, while others had their arrears completely wiped out. EWN understands the city's council has recommended that Chief Information Officer Moloko Mompiao be held accountable for the billing crisis. Alfara Mushwana reports.
Ekurhuleni's Chief Information Officer must now explain to the city manager why he shouldn't be suspended after allegedly failing to monitor the city's billing system. With electricity accounting for 40% of Ekurhuleni's total revenue, the Metro says the negligence in its department has cost the city a huge chunk of its projected money. DA councillor in the city, Fana Nkosi, says although the responsible city officials must account, the billing system shouldn't be easily tampered with in the first place.
It's a serious matter that we also said it must not be taken lightly. It jeopardizes service delivery as well, and those who are able to pay accounts, how would they trust the city?
Action SA councillor Malisela Dolo argues that the heads of the Energy and Finance Department should also be called to account, as they too failed to detect the manipulation of the system. Alfa Ramshwana, Eyewitness News.
Lawyers for disgraced Bishop Stephen Zondo want his trial to restart from scratch and for 4 years' worth of evidence to be scrapped. The leader of the Rivers of Living Water is accused of the rape and sexual assault of his congregants and his staff. The state has closed its case and it's now up to Zondo's turn make his turn. But the embattled pastor wants the presiding judge in his matter, Papi Mosopa, to recuse himself, saying he has shown bias and has already found him guilty. Khomozo Modise has more.
It's been years of twists and turns in the trial against Bishop Stephen Zondo, similar to the matter against Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omodoso. Like Omodoso, Zondo brought a discharge application that was dismissed by the court. And just like Omodoso, Zondo has brought an application for the judge to recuse himself. His lawyers say Judge Barbara Masekela disqualified himself when he stated that the evidence before him is credible, reliable and trustworthy. But State Advocate Jennifer Cronje has opposed this application, calling it frivolous.
My Lord indicated the court's view, prima facie view at this stage of the proceedings. Nowhere in this judgment did my Lord make a finding that the accused was guilty.
Judge Masekela will hand down judgment in the recusal application in 2 weeks' time. Eyewitness News, Pretoria.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says he's disgusted by men who sexually exploit young women in the workplace for a step up the corporate ladder. This form of gender violence and exploitation has been raised by Chief Justice Mandisa Maya at the International Association of Women Judges Conference underway in Cape Town. Ramaphosa has urged for more conversations to be had about sextortion. Lindsay Dentlinker has more.
As the Women's Judges Conference grapples with issues of gender diversity and inclusion in the workplace, President Cyril Ramaphosa says more needs to be done to root out patriarchy in society and the spillover into the workplace.
There's nothing as demeaning as a big oga, a man who is in a senior position, requiring and demanding sex from a younger subordinate, so that they may rise, so that they may get better pay, so that they may be better treated.
Ramaphosa says he's also aware that women in business are often preyed upon by men in influential positions or those who hold the purse strings to finance, demanding sexual favors. Ramaphosa says men and boys need to be part of the conversation to prevent sextortion, while women should speak out to have better control over their economic independence. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News.
And the governor of Nigeria's Borno state has warned that jihadist group Boko Haram is making a comeback after its fighters staged a series of attacks and seized control of some parts of the northeastern state. He's called for more military assistance for soldiers fighting the insurgency. But according to the BBC, the Nigerian government has downplayed the governor's fears, saying security in the country has improved in the last 18 months. Borno State has been at the center of a 15-year insurgency by Boko Haram, which has forced more than 2 million people to flee their homes and killed more than 40,000. At the height of its insurgency in 2015, Boko Haram controlled huge areas in Borno State before being beaten back. In 2014, they kidnapped more than 270 schoolgirls from the town of Chibok. Gold's trading at $3,118.75 an ounce. The rand is at 19.24 to the dollar, 24.81 to the pound, 21.19 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $64.80 a barrel.
In Centurion, there's an accident scene. This is on the N1 southbound, causing delays between the R21 Flying Saucer interchange and Boerta Avenue. Look out for those faulty traffic lights in Edenville. That's on Waterfontein Road and Van Riebeek, as well as in Sunninghill at Witkoppen and Achta.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with scattered showers and thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 23 and 24 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. Opposition parties in the city of Ekurhuleni are calling for a review of the metro's billing system after it was manipulated to charge households and businesses much less for electricity.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
702.
Live
on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7
and 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Welcome back. It's 9 minutes past 10. You are listening to the Clement Manyathela show. Tshidi Madia here, standing in for Clement Manyathela. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. And of course, after that, Mandy Wiener will come through with the midday report. She'll be followed by Lebogile Mabocha and of course John Perlman. That'll take you through to the Money Show with Stephen Khuters a little bit later on. So this particular segment of the show, from my understanding, you pick somebody who's being honored, who's interesting, who's special, and you spend an hour with them. You're literally hanging out. So I'm excited about our guest today. We're hanging out with Barbara Masekela, an activist, an author, a poet. She was honored, and a former diplomat. She was honored by the University of Johannesburg for her work quite recently as a struggle stalwart and a diplomat. So she's contributed to the arts. Very interesting stories, mind you, about her and studying up the arts department. I actually want to views about that particular department and its work and how artists feel about it, right? So that's the person that will be in conversation with. Our lines are open throughout that conversation. So you can call in. You can call in and give her flowers too. That's more than welcome. 011-883-0702. That's the line. 072-702-1702 if you want to send a voice note or a WhatsApp.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
All right, as I said, on the Hanging Out feature today, we are hanging out with an activist, an author, a poet, right? She's been recently bestowed with an honorary doctorate from the University of Johannesburg. That's for her work in as a struggle stalwart, her activism in diplomacy, and her contribution to the arts. We get to know her today a little bit better. What do you know, dear listener, about Barbara Masekela? That's who's joining me in studio. What would you like to know about her? What questions do you want to put to her? I think it's definitely a privilege to have you in studio. Good morning. Welcome to Radio 702.
Good morning, Tshidi.
Thank you so
much. Good morning,
much.
listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start this conversation not even about you, Jay. I want to go far, far back. I know you were born in Alex, if I'm correct. No, you weren't. She's shaking her head already. But I do know that you also had some upbringing in Mpumalanga. Were you actually born in Mpumalanga and not in Alex?
We were all born in Mpumalanga because my grandmother lived there in Witbank, Kwakuqa.
What was that like? Let's speak about that. I always find it fascinating when you go to other provinces or when you travel, even outside, how different even the cities are from one another, the provinces are from one another. And obviously there's this time and space issue where growing up at a different time is completely different from growing up in our era. What was that like for you? What do you cherish? What do you remember? What's the nostalgia like when you look back at your time in Mpumalanga?
I think that what I always remember about childhood is that there were much fewer people in South Africa. People forget that when I was growing up, there were only about 18 million people in South Africa.
Yeah, compared to the 60 now, yeah.
To about 6, yeah, more, yeah. So it's but also I think something to remember is that a lot of, for African people in South Africa, a lot of them can't go back to where they were born and grew up because those places don't exist anymore because of the Group Areas Act. So a lot of people were displaced, so yes. the line of history was broken up. When I came back from exile in 1990, my brother said, let's drive to Witbank because we still have relatives there. So we went there to see them. And for one thing, my grandmother's house was not there because in the old location, people had houses that they had built for themselves. And each house was different. And the population was less. You knew everybody. Everybody knew you. And when I walked down the street, people remembered my mother walking to school, and this is not the case now in South Africa that, people talk about community, but our communities have really been broken because everybody is new and sometimes people don't even know who their neighbors are, So a child walking down the street is just a child walking by itself along the street. So I remember open spaces, and I remember that the aeroplane was a big thing because in those days people didn't take a flight to Durban or Cape Town or PE or Polokwane. They took the train, and it took a long time. And so what I remember also is the goods train. Which was on top of the village at the end of the township, and carrying coal to Mozambique and goods to other parts of southern Africa. I remember that my grandmother was a tavern keeper. I don't like to call it a shebeen because I think it's a new word, It
also has a lot of negative connotations. Shebeen versus tavern.
Absolutely. But she brewed beer like other older women who did not want to do washing or cleaning in white people's homes. So she was a businesswoman, and she had a tavern. And so we had people coming in every evening to have a drink. And my grandmother was very strict. And there were different types of taverns. Some things where people were really getting down, listening to music, and so on. Women were not, young women, my grandmother did not allow them in our tavern because we had a lot of minors coming in. And she was always listening to the conversation and telling people, don't go there. I've got a child. I'm raising a child here. And when the conversation went into things that a child should not listen to. Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of that now.
Yeah.
I want to speak a little bit now about your journey into the struggle, so to speak, when did you realize that life as you knew it isn't what life could be, that there is some subjugation that's happening, that the opportunities that are there for your mother and all the other women are quite limited? You spoke about those who didn't want to do the washing. They had taverns and the likes. When did you realize that there's a limitation, that there's something about the country where opportunities are not equal?
I think people ask that a lot, and I think it's an interesting question because I think for my generation, we came out of a situation where our parents had been to boarding schools, missionary schools, like Bo Inkamane, Kilnaton, they were well-known, Marian Hill. Yes. I, for instance, was sent to Inanda Girls Seminary in Natal. So, we came from that not first, but maybe they were the third or fourth generation of educated people. They were all teachers, nurses, lawyers, a few lawyers, fewer doctors, and priests. Those were the areas in which you could follow a profession, and they were respected in the township. And I think I tell people that, you could not have been a South African and not understood that you were being discriminated against. Because conversations were about people arrested for passes going to jail, people arrested for not paying poll tax, people had exemptions, but police, there was already a kind of pre-stage before the formal apartheid. Apartheid took place in my childhood when I was about 7. In 1948, I was 7 years old. So apartheid came, everybody was talking about the new regime
you couldn't
that was
it.
going to, and everybody was talking about the Afrikaners and so forth, and we knew about Mandela, we knew about Sisulu, because the political parties in South Africa at the time were legal. They were meeting openly, and it is when they intensified their work because of the intensified repression that, only around 1960 that the ANC, for instance, and PAC were banned.
Barbara, I have a song list. You spoke about how you asked about your favorite songs. I have a song list with me. I want to play some of your favorite songs for our listeners. I see your brother is also listed here. Tshidi Madia is also here somewhere. How do you want us to pick the songs that you want us to play? Do you want to pick a song for the listeners, or should I pick a song and then you'll tell me why you like it?
You pick a song.
Ooh.
Play
Okay.
redemption song.
Oh, you've decided for us? I will
Yeah.
not say no to Bob Marley. So let's play a little bit of redemption song and she'll tell us why the song is meaningful to her.
Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever have, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Ooh, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever have, redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop at the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Yes, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever have, redemption songs. All I ever have, redemption songs. These songs of freedom, songs of freedom.
This is a beautiful start. This is a fantastic song choice. What comes to your mind? I'm looking at your face. You've been smiling the whole time the song has been playing. Where does your mind go when you hear Redemption Song?
You know, I always tell people that my generation, we are so lucky because we grew up in a period of continuous development, political and so on. You know, it's a period during which Africa was getting free. So every year, every 6 months, there was an African country getting free from colonialism, independence. Ghana was the first.
Where the unimaginable was suddenly happening.
And we in South Africa, we couldn't even imagine it, but it was something that kept us strong.
Yeah.
Because we knew that it was something that was moving all over our continent, and that at some point or other, it was going to come to South Africa. For us in South Africa, we thought that we would get freedom earlier, that we would make freedom earlier. When some of us went into exile, we didn't think that we were going to be away for decades. We thought that, in 5 years' time, 10, because things were moving. There were protests. There were bus strikes. Like I grew up in Alexandra, there was the Patco bus strike, and people closed down the place and walked to town to work. I grew up at a time when our people were resisting already. There was the defiance campaign, know, and there were trials. There was the treason trial, and I was a teenager then. So
the country was alive. You were lit in terms of the possibilities and what your participation should be. I know you stayed in Ghana at some point. The decision to go into exile, when did you make it? What went through your head about this being the right thing for you to do?
Well, I don't think that people made decision as such. Things happen.
You didn't sit and think through.
Because you saw other people. Because, for instance, we had writers like Bo Ezekiel and Mpatlele. They were leaving the country. People were Bo Arthur Maimane, Bo Bloke Mudisane. We were reading, and the press was strong. We had newspapers, the Golden City Post, Bantu World, and all those newspapers, they were writing about what was happening. So, if you lived in the urban area, and there were people like Father Trevor Huddleston, and so on.
Your brother also writes about Father Huddleston, Tshidi Madia in his own book.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about why the arts as a meaning of change, as the change agent. Why get involved and work through that?
I think that for one thing, I come from a family. My father was a sculptor. My father was a sculptor, and when I was a child in the 40s, he won prizes for his sculpture, and he was a sculptor all his life. Most artists who are in the plastic arts know about my dad, Thomas Masekela. So we grew up in a home where there were books, there was music. These things were talked about. There were books at my home about the African masks, about Picasso. My father read, Chinese philosophy. He was a very eccentric man, and he was a health inspector at the health committee in Alexandra Township. And his boss was Dr. A.B. Kluma. And the Secretary General of the ANC, Alfred Nzo, who was the longest standing Secretary General of the ANC, he became our first foreign minister. He worked with my father. He was a junior health inspector at the Alexandra Health Committee. So I knew people like Bo Betha Mashaba. She was later she got married and she was called Betha Kloa.
Oh, yes.
Bo Florence Moposho, they were leaders of the Patco bus strike in Alex. So I grew up in that atmosphere of, people saying no to apartheid, but also it was an era in which the political space was getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And, of course, it ended up with things like the 90-day detention. It ended up with things like the emergency, laws and so on, and people being arrested, and slowly, and then of course by 1960. The political organizations, liberation movements were banned. The ANC was banned. The PAC was banned. People were in jail. Yeah, and the space was closed up completely.
Yeah,
almost.
so you had to go.
Yeah. So I don't understand under those circumstances, how don't you become political? How don't you get affected?
Some people are asking that question today.
Yeah.
But I'm going to speak to you about that. How do you not see where the country is or not want to do something when you even listen to somebody like Mayor Barbara Masekela? She's telling you what the atmosphere is like. Doesn't she draw you in? Don't you want to just sit and just listen to what they lived through, her eyes, a perspective of this country and what this freedom is? I'm seeing a lot of WhatsApps and voice notes for you. I'm going to come to all of you, I promise. I'm going to put your questions to her. I want to listen to more stories and also watch her face when she listens to some of her favorite music. It's now 10:30. Here are your headlines. We'll come back to Mayor Masekela after this.
Thanks, Tshidi. Good morning. Eskom says criminal activities targeting its infrastructure remain high, and this is a serious concern. Many substations, high voltage pylons and transformers are among the infrastructure being targeted, but the power utility says it has seen a decline in incidents when compared to the previous year. Lawyers for disgraced Bishop Stephen Zondo want his trial to restart from scratch and for 4 years' worth of evidence to be scrapped. The leader of the Rivers of Living Water is accused of the rape and sexual assault of his congregants and his staff. The state has closed its case and it's now Zondo's turn to make his. And France's parliamentary speaker has written of her immense disappointment over the methods used by President Emmanuel Macron during his almost 8 years in power. Yael Braun-Pivet, a senior figure in Macron's centrist party, has expressed the view in a book that she's published today. She's become one of the first figures within the ruling elite to air such grievances publicly. And those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 11 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
In the city of Tshwane, there's slow-moving traffic. That's in the Centurion area on the N1 southbound between the R21 Flying Saucer Interchange and Botha Avenue. There's also delays in the Joburg area. That's leaving the CBD on the M2 westbound between the Crown Interchange and Main Reef Road. Otherwise, things have settled down pretty nicely across 702 land. No serious accidents have been reported. Just look out for those faulty traffic lights in Edenville, Modderfontein Road and Van Riebeck. Traffic lights also not working in Rand Park Ridge at Bayers, Nodia and the N1 North. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online and on the EWN app.
At 702,
we're proud of a lot of things,
but none more than our connection to you.
because we know when we walk the talk,
We're never alone.
I had been waiting so long for UIF for 18 months, and Kabazela and John Perlman had somebody from UIF on. And you know what? I finally got paid, and I just want to say it's actually saved my life. So 702, thank you, and you reach far and wide to all people.
Every SMS,
voice note,
email,
phone call,
your every word leads to action.
that changes lives, changes minds, uplifts communities, and holds authority to account.
Together, we've turned dialogue into good deeds.
And promises into progress.
Yes, we did that. You and 702. So, stay tuned.
Because if this is how far we've come, imagine how much further we can go.
When we stick together. 702.
Let's walk the talk.
Choose your health, choose Clicks. With over 200 Clicks clinics nationwide, convenient expert care is within reach. Their clinics offer wellness screenings and primary healthcare services for you and your family. They also provide mom and baby services like baby immunizations, family planning, pregnancy care, and more. Their nurses are available to give holistic healthcare advice and support. Book an appointment today at clicks.co.za or on the Clicks app. T's and C's apply. Clicks, feel good, pay less.
The new Corolla Cross. Fill it with friendship. Fill it with...
How's it, Brie?
And...
Sharp, bruh.
Fill it with family. Fill it with...
We're gonna be late.
And...
Coming now.
Fill it with Harry Smith halfway stops. Fill it with...
Lekker, nee.
Fill it with life. With a new look exterior including a geometric grille, panoramic view monitor, park distance control, a power boot kick sensor and a spacious interior, the new Corolla Cross is filled with life.
Dear Journal, day 3045 of trying to be an adult. I can't figure out the secret to working, cooking, cleaning, exercising, socializing, and sleeping all in one day. It's exhausting. Maybe the answer is to do it all f***ing terribly.
Got evicted from the family home? Get covered at pineapple.co.za. It's like 570 Rand a month, so it's 100% the insurance for you. Underwritten by Old Mutual Alternative Risk Transfer Insurer Limited, licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP. Premiums are risk profile dependent.
702 was in conversation with Altron, celebrating 60 years of solving real-world problems and discussing their plans to rebuild and re-energize Johannesburg through partnership and collaboration.
Yeah, it's a real privilege. You know, I'm only the fourth CEO in the 60-year history of Altron. We transitioned, obviously, my predecessor, a well-known gentleman who now chairs Eskom, Tete Nyati, who we were also privileged to have with us last night. He really did that sort of professionalization of the business in 2017, moving from a family to the kind of business it is today. So I think it's really a great privilege for me to lead this business and to be part of this business that has stood, you know, I guess, the ups and downs of, you know, both Joburg and the South African economy over the last 60 years.
Visit Altron.com for more info. Altron, a technology industry leader since 1965.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
It's 10:36. Welcome back to the Clement Manyathela show. Tshidi Madia hanging out with me, Barbara Masekela. I was laughing because we're going to speak about her brother, but much later. I don't want to speak about Brahu because the person before us, right? If you're listening, you're drawn in, is an amazing storyteller. She will draw you in about her own stories. And I think a lot of people are asking a lot of questions about freedom and whether it was worth it. And they're very thankful. I can tell you that for without question, my Barbara, like a lot of people are thankful for the sacrifices. Today, and it's important that we're speaking to you today because it's also been 32 years since Chris Hani was assassinated. When you look back at the sacrifices, do you ever pause and go, it was worth it? Or other times when you look at the way we handle our democracy, our freedom, and think, these people have no idea what it's taken. Are there regrets about the sacrifices to get us to where we are?
No, I don't think that one can ever regret. And I think that first of all, I want to be very clear that things are not the way they were during apartheid. Yes. There is a difference.
Louder.
I mean, that is where we must start, that people, we did not grow up under this kind of freedom. I mean, to go from here to Springs, let's say, or Boksburg, you didn't know what would happen or whether you would see a person again, you know. So, I mean, those are things we cannot touch. The freedom of speech, the freedom of association, but they are such important things, you know. And I think one of the things is that we have the freedom to say, to criticize. In some countries, you can't even talk about a political leader or a president and still have supper at home, you know.
Here they call their president cupcake. Let's speak about...
Absolutely. And people go to the other extreme of being totally disrespectful,
yes,
you know, and not respecting, because if you do not respect the office, then that office cannot be of importance, cannot bring about the necessary changes. And I'm not saying that things are good. Yes. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we should be balanced. And I mean, the one that breaks my heart, it cuts me into two, is when people say, people like Mandela and Sisulu, you know, sold out, you know, the country.
And that narrative comes back quite often, yes.
That narrative, it is so heartbreaking for people who did make the sacrifice. And I think people have no clue. They have no clue what it means to live in a country that discriminates against people because of their color, that, a country where people can't move around. And also we have no clue of what war means. We're loose about things, fighting, but we have no clue and I think that sometimes we should show people more what is going on in Sudan, what is going on in Palestine, and what is going on in troubled parts of the world. And I'm not saying that people should not criticize, what is going on in the country, because it is bad. Yes, we must be doing much better than we are doing, but we must also be contributing to that change. And I think that one of the key things in our country that is really missing is the question of cultural institutions, cultural education, cultural agencies. And I don't mean Market Theatre, Joburg Theatre here in town. I mean in the middle of the township.
We don't even seem to care for our archives, Barbara. But what I want to do, because a lot of people want to engage you, and I feel like I'm hogging you. I wanted to speak to you about your time in Ghana. You've lived in other places. I actually was looking at one of your books. I'm going to go to calls very soon and the WhatsApps. But I was looking at one of the books, and I couldn't figure out if is it poli, as in like flowers from, I think flower from Ghana. But you know what? I kept confusing it with pole. That's why slowly. And I was like, either way, it makes sense to me. But it's poli, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speak to me about your time, though, in the different countries. Where would you, in a heartbeat, with your eyes closed, go back to?
Oh, I could go back to Ghana tomorrow.
Not New York, because you've lived in so many places. Not Zambia, not Britain. Definitely Ghana.
But I could go back to Zambia. I could live in Zambia. I could go to Tanzania.
I love the East of Africa. Yeah.
I couldn't go to New York because it's changed. It's not the New York I lived in as a young girl, listening to, going to see Bob Marley, going to see Aretha Franklin, going to see Hugh Masekela, going to see Miles Davis. It's not the same New York. It's a different New York that has been sanitized, and and all the international people like Haitians and so on who lived in Manhattan where we lived.
The melting pot
of
that area. Before I go to callers, I keep saying I'm going to callers. I'm going to get into trouble with the listeners. Being abroad and being allowed to be naughty or experiencing something completely different with your brother, I don't think that's an experience that one can put money on, a price on, right? Exploring something new with your brother. Just quickly touching on, because you said to me earlier, oh, of course they'll ask about Hugh Masekela. Of course they'll ask about a brother.
And
of course they'll ask about Mandela.
I love
Do you love it when we bring up your brother?
I love it that people ask about my brother, that they ask about Mandela, that because those people, their lives, they are alive now.
In this moment,
because their works are still nurturing us.
Absolutely.
And I think it's right that people should ask about them, and it's right that we should speak about them. And there are hundreds of others,
that must be celebrated. Absolutely.
But we know, but there are many, many South Africans who have put this country on the map and who are products of this very imperfect country, which we must work to make it better.
Absolutely. I'm going to play you a few voice notes. I'm hoping to put in a call, but let me start with the voice notes. Hear what some of the listeners want to say to you. Please take a listen. Do you have headphones on? Please put on the headphones so you can listen to what people are saying to you and what questions they're putting to you. All right. Abel?
Good morning, Siri. My question to me, Barbara, is that looking at South Africa today, can she proudly say that there is freedom in this country? the freedom that she and other veterans went to exile to fight for. Thank you very much, Peter Maida Machaba from Leswaga.
SITA, trust you well. Thanks for bringing in Barbara Masekela. You know, like her brother, Ubrahu, I can listen to both of them the whole day. Very fascinating. Whenever they speak, you get a sense that these people do understand what life is about, the politics, the social construct issues. You know, they very fascinating. And then thanks for bringing her in. Thanks, Tshidi.
Thank you. It is such a treat for me as well. Thank you so much for that. Nicholas and Santon, you also wanted to speak to me, Barbara?
Yeah, thanks very much, Tshidi. You know, I remember probably 10 years ago when I was a chief of staff at the Arts and Culture, I had to approach Mayor Barbara in her retirement. And, you know, we needed someone to lead and chair the state theater. I mean, that's our big one, you know. And I remember she said to me, Nicholas, I'm too old now, I've retired, unless you're going to help me to work with young people. Now, Tshidi, at that time, it was not fashionable for anybody to really do that. And young people used to feel as if nobody was giving them any chance. And she said, give me young people, and then I will take on this role and chair. And we did that. We appointed a number of young people, the Tebogo Mputis and the Sylvesters, and they did a marvelous job. And I really want to thank her for this. And by the way, she certainly celebrated birthday with a number of famous people, the Madibas, the Richard Branson on the 18th of July. Thank you very much for
your line
her
is a little bit
contribution.
choppy.
Thank you very much for her contribution, Tshidi.
All right, thank you so much, Nicholas. I don't know if you want to say anything. You can speak. He can hear you as well, May Barbara. I think I've just lost Nicholas there. What wonderful memories and the importance of bringing young people along the journey. That's what he's flagging there. A lot of young people now look at arts and think that it is a demotion. Often, when a minister is given arts, they feel that minister is politically on the outskirts, it's a demotion. It's almost refreshing when you watch somebody like Gayton, who seems to be excited there. Young people feel that they're forgotten in the art space. Your thoughts about the work that you've done before, the importance of elevating young people in that area as well?
Well, I think that culture, you know, has to do with the life of the people, you know, and I think that one way where I am very, very critical of our government, and I blame myself too, is that we do not have cultural institutions where the people are. And I am not talking about celebrity culture. I'm talking about community centers everywhere where people learn how to swim, how to play sports, how to play musical instruments, where there is a counselor who can help them with, you know, help certain people with their problems, you know, social problems. We just do not have those institutions. And as a result, we have impoverished our whole cultural industry because we do not have places where we are creating future artists, future audiences, etc., etc.
I hope the minister is listening. I'm going to take a quick break. Prince and Joburg, I see you. I'll put you on in just a bit. Let's take a quick ad break.
The Midday Report.
Weekdays,
12 to 1.
How would you define your relationship currently?
The DA has not behaved in bad faith at all. During this entire process, needless to say, there clearly is an issue and there clearly does need to be these discussions, which are going to be inevitable. In any coalition where you have over 10 parties, it's how you resolve those differences. And I don't think calling press conferences is helpful towards getting cool head to discuss what is clearly an impasse now within the government of national unity. And that's certainly what I'm committed to do.
The Midday Report
with Mandy Wiener.
12 to 1 on 702.
702. When you're out there hustling, juggling the calls and meetings, making the next buck, doing the next job, growing your business with blood, sweat, and tears, you need tech solutions that will help you get things done. And that's why you should visit mtnbusiness.co.za or go to an MTN store near you, because you'll find the tech solutions you need to level up your business and make your life easier, so you can get back to doing what you do best, the hustle. Today, we make moves. MTN.
Simply Asia is giving away 4 tickets to Thailand. But who will you take with? Let's hear what is being said in South African homes.
I don't know, Gerald. I love Auntie Janine, but she talks so much. Imagine her on a 12-hour flight.
But what about Uncle Louis? He did pay for our wedding. Darling, which child are we leaving behind?
Obviously the one who complains the most.
Hey, that's not fair.
Whoever you pick, just make sure you enter the Simply Asia Songkran competition. T's and C's apply.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. And it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We're also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct. To give you balanced programming, fair comment, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we're not living up to the code, let us know on comment@702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission, PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024. For more, visit bccsa.co.za. The Money Show.
Weekday evenings at 6.
It was always clear Beijing would respond to Washington in this way, and I presume decision makers, they really had no choice. They have to look tough.
I think from a Chinese perspective, of course, they can't back down. This is, I think, two things, sort of a dramatic end, been a slow burn. If you didn't believe it a few years ago, you certainly will now. Is the end of globalization as we've known it post, 1990, thereabouts?
Dr. Martin Davis.
The Money Show
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show on 702 with Stephen Grootes is proudly brought to you by ABSA CIB, honored by the 2025 SALTA Awards. Your story matters. ABSA is a registered FSP.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
It's 10:51. You must hang out with an 80-year-old, 80-plus-year-old someone. Ooh, she's got a lot of commentary. I know you're not done. You have more to say. I know you have more to say. I feel like I'm worried about time because we don't have enough time and she actually wants more time. You're going to come back, Akir. You'll come back?
If you are nice to me.
Let me be nice to you. I'm going to play you a little bit of something from your brother. Does that count as being nice to you? Okay, let's do that. Me, Barbara. So that was your brother. That's Tshidi Madia and the Union of South Africa. The song is called Caution. Where do you go when you hear that trumpet, that famous trumpet? Where does your head go? Does your heart remember him?
I think that, perhaps what I should say is that through the many years that one was in exile, one was always at home. And if you listen to the music or you read the books or you listen to the poetry, what you get, or you look at the art, what you get is that people were in South Africa. They may have been living abroad, but this is what inspired some of the greatest art.
The driving force.
If you think about our great musician, Miriam Makeba, she was inspired by this country. And it is something that is precious. Our country is so precious for us. And it continues. It should be an inspiration for us.
Before I'm running out of time. I know you complained about the ads. I'm definitely running out of time. But it would be remiss of me if I don't speak about UJ honoring you for your work. And then what is that like for you, where universities, that tradition, this is Rao. This used to be Rao. The Rand Afrikaans University at some point would have never seen it.
It's a sign of the transformation that has taken place, because the University of Johannesburg, that honored me with an honorary degree, was Rao, as you say, the Rand Afrikaans University, and today it is a fully fledged South African university for everybody, and one of the biggest and one of the best. And incidentally, we also have at UJ, at least UJ has, I'm a writing fellow at UJ, at the Johannesburg Institute of Advanced Studies. And through UJ, we were able this year, for the third time, we have a Johannesburg Festival of Women Writers.
Oh, that's exciting.
And it is one of the most successful and inspiring, projects, where you see women from all walks of life coming in for 2 days just to learn how to write, to talk about books, to sell books, to promote books, etc.
I want to do that. That sounds exciting. Unfortunately, time is not on my side.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to kind of wrap it at that point. Thank you so much for joining us. I need more of this conversation, that I know for sure. Let's take a quick break.
Thank you.
The roar of the crowd, the thrill of clay court tennis, and the magic of Paris could all be yours. Destinations by Frasers, in collaboration with Delcy Paris and Air France, is giving you a once-in-a-lifetime chance to witness the Men's French Open final with tickets and return flights for two. Purchase any Delcy luggage from Destinations by Frasers or Frasers stores this April to enter. Destinations by Frasers, South Africa's premium choice in luggage. Visit us in-store or online at destinations.za.com. Paris is calling. Will you answer?
You wouldn't want to pay more than you need to for your cell phone bill. So why overpay for your car insurance? Switch to Outsurance and you could save big every month. Jermaine, a 43-year-old man, is a real Outsurance client who saves a whopping 360 Rand a month on his 2021 Mazda 3 1.5 Dynamic. Now that's a real deal. Why pay more? Switch and save today. SMS out to 45142. That's out to 45142. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurers and FSP and T's and C's online.
Some people go all out for date night. We just go out to the driveway.
Exquisitely sculpted lines.
And an interior that could pass for a luxury penthouse.
Why go out when the classiest venue is already parked outside?
The new Haval Jolion Pro from $4,399 per month. Its effortless style steals every scene. Visit gwm.coza for T's and C's and to book a test drive. Go with more. Go with the new GWM Haval Jolion Pro.
Now. It's 11 o'clock. This Eyewitness News is brought to you by cars.co.za. With cars.co.za, find what moves you.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. As Tshwane Mayor Nasipi Moya is set to deliver her first State of the City address today, the DA has accused her of taking credits for the previous administration's work. Moya was elected to the position in October last year, and before that, she was deputy mayor for a year to her predecessor, Celia Brink. Brink says some of Moya's recent successes were in part through the work of the previous DA-led coalition government. Thabiso Goba has more.
The DA in Tshwane says Nasipi Moya inherited a capital on the brink of recovery. The return of clean drinking water to Hammanskraal, settling some of the debts incurred by the metro, and delivering the municipality's first funded budget in 4 years. DA Tshwane caucus leader Celia Brink says all of that was made possible by a strong foundation his administration left behind.
In government, the DA and our partners had a mission to build a capital city that works for all of its people, starting with the improvement of the city's financial position without raising rates and taxes above what ordinary people can afford. To the extent that progress has been made, it was achieved on the back of tough decisions.
At a recent media briefing, Moya said it was not important who takes credit for the work of the city, as long as the residents were benefiting. Thabiso Goba, Eyewitness News.
Eskom says criminal activities targeting its infrastructure remain high, and this is a serious concern. Many substations, high voltage pylons and transformers are among the infrastructure being targeted, but the power utility says it has seen a decline in incidents when compared to previous years. Eskom's Daphne Mukwena says ongoing theft and vandalism remain a major threat to continuous electricity supply and public safety.
As of the end of February, infrastructure vandalism and theft have cost Eskom approximately 221 million rands year to date, down from 271 million in the same period of the previous year. Despite this improvement, the issue demands ongoing vigilance and proactive community involvement.
Lawyers for disgraced Bishop Stephen Zondo want his trial to restart from scratch and for 4 years' worth of evidence to be scrapped. The leader of the Rivers of Living Water is accused of the rape and sexual assault of his congregants and his staff. The state has closed its case and it's now Zondo's turn to make his. But the embattled pastor wants the presiding judge in this matter to recuse himself, saying he has shown a bias and has already found him guilty. Homotomadisa reports.
It's been years of twists and turns in the trial against Bishop Stephen Zondo, similar to the matter against Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omodoso. Like Omodoso, Zondo brought a discharge application that was dismissed by the court. And just like Omodoso, Zondo has brought an application for the judge to recuse himself. His lawyers say Judge Papi Mosopa disqualified himself when he stated that the evidence before him is credible, reliable and trustworthy. But State Advocate Jennifer Cronje has opposed this application, calling it frivolous.
My Lord indicated the court's view, prima facie view at this stage of the proceedings. Nowhere in this judgment did my Lord make a finding that the accused was guilty.
Judge Mosopa will hand down judgment in the recusal application in 2 weeks' time. Eyewitness News, Pretoria.
And France's parliamentary speaker has written of her immense disappointment over the methods used by President Emmanuel Macron during his almost 8 years in power. Yael Bruin-Pivet, a senior figure in Macron's centrist party, expressed the view in a book she's published today. She becomes one of the first figures within the ruling elite to air such grievances publicly. Her book, titled In My Place, covers the challenges she's faced on becoming the first woman Speaker of the National Assembly and the alleged sexism she had to overcome, as well as her assessment of the president's style of rule. In the book, she gives no concrete hint over whether she could stand in France's 2027 presidential elections, in which Macron cannot compete because of having reached the two-term limit. Gold is trading at $3,118.75 an ounce. The rand is at 19.24 to the dollar, 24.81 to the pound, 21.19 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $64.80 a barrel.
City of Tshwane, bumper-to-bumper traffic in the Centurion area, N1 South between the R21 Flying Saucer interchange and Botha Avenue in Irene is still in Pretoria, traffic sluggish. on Almapias Drive approaching Main Road, and in Selby, that's leaving the Joburg CBD. Expect some delays on the M2 westbound between the Crown Interchange and Main Reef Road.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with scattered showers and thunder showers expected today. The temperatures will peak at highs between 23 and 24 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour, as Tshwane Mayor Tshidi Madia is set to deliver her first State of the City address today. The DA has cautioned her of taking credit for the previous administration's work.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
Hey Jim, what's wrong? Hi Bob, I'm just so confused. I'm trying to buy a car and I don't know where to stop. Well, have you tried to... Cars.coza. Have you tried to... Cars.coza. Sorry, we're trying to do an advert.
Whatever car you want to buy or sell, cut through the and just go to cars.coza and let's find what moves you. Cars.coza.
7:02
Live
on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7
and 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
It's 6 minutes past 11, the Clement Manyathela show, Tshidi Madia. This is the third and final hour of the show. But before I get into the conversation, I've kept Mayor Barbara Masekela with me for a little bit because I just wanted to wrap up on something. We had a fantastic hour with her at the Hanging Out a short while ago. I can't let you go without asking for your thoughts about today. I said to you earlier that today we commemorate 32 years since the assassination of the much-loved Chris Hani. Your thoughts about today and what you want us to think about as we mark yet another year since the country was taken to the brink.
I think that what I would like to say is that, Chris Hani was an example for us in South Africa of a man who was not only hardworking, but who believed in the people of South Africa, and that he was motivated because of the people of South Africa that he wanted to see uplifted. And one of the wonderful things about Chris Hani, I think that we must remember, especially now, is that he was not so great that he was not able to say, we made a mistake here and we made a mistake there, and we are going to try and improve that. And I think that's where we have to go as South Africa, that we have to acknowledge the errors that we have made and stop thinking about ourselves only and holding on to positions. We must correct the mistakes that we have made. For instance, by having cultural institutions in this country so that we can begin to help to shape the future of the young people of our country. Because if you do not change the imagination of young people, what do you expect them to think if you don't give them other positive things to think about, other things that make them creative, that free their imagination? And only culture can do that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to leave it at that note. Free the imagination. Thank you so much for stepping into studio. I've really enjoyed our guest. That's Mayor Barbara Masekela, an activist, an author, really just an all-round incredible person to communicate with. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed myself, but it was too short.
I agree, actually. Thank you so much. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the dialogue. We're going to speak about the Government of National Unity. The future of the GNU is supposedly under question. We'll be joined by political analyst Prince Mashele, Professor Kagiso Poe from the Wits School of Governance, and digital politics editor at Times Live, Lizeka Tandwa.
John Perlman. Weekday afternoons,
3 to 6.
tragedy out in George in May last year. The reports that are coming out raise some very, very serious questions.
The report doesn't tell us why the building collapsed. So it tells us that there were some irregularities, occupational health and safety issues, construction starting before approval. It's from within the NHBRC scope. So it's not an engineering analysis of, which beam, column, slab or foundation failed. Was it a design flaw or a construction flaw?
Professor Richard Walls, Professor of Structural and Fire Engineering.
John Perlman.
3 to 6 on 702. South Africa, get ready to feel the pulse of the Hollywood Bets Durban July. Prepare for an exciting day of high fashion, thrilling horse racing and world-class entertainment. Watch this space for an incredible artist lineup announcement as we celebrate this year's magnificent theme, Marvels of Mzansi. Be a part of the buzz. Tickets are on sale now at Ticket Pro, Spar Pays on kiosks and selected Sasol stores. See you on Saturday the 5th of July at the Hollywood Bets Greyville Racecourse for Africa's greatest horse racing and social event.
So we did a thing. A full commitment kind of thing. We've partnered with Sixt to bring worldwide to your doorstep. So, you see how that's a serious thing? Because that's what you deserve. We know you're the GOAT. So, premium it is. Premium service, premium vehicles, premium you, premium us. Sani Sixt is all about adding extra to ordinary. Extra reach, extra countries, so you can be extra premium worldwide. Be the greatest of all time and rent Sani Sixt.
Dear Journal, day 4642 of trying to be an adult. I miss when being a millennial meant I was young, dumb and broke. Now, it just means I'm old, out of touch and, you guessed it, still broke.
Aggressively realizing your age? Get covered at pineapple.co.za. It's simple and like 19 Rand a day, so it's 100% the insurance for you. Underwritten by Old Mutual Alternative Risk Transfer Insurer Limited, a licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP. Premiums are risk profile dependent.
702 was in conversation with Altron, celebrating 60 years of solving real-world problems and discussing their plans to rebuild and re-energize Johannesburg through partnership and collaboration.
You've partnered with Josie Majosi. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I think firstly, it's really important that it's time to tell the Joburg story. I think for good reasons, things like Eskom, Transnet has been a big part of the national dialogue over the last couple of years. But I think it's really time that we put our focus on Joburg. It's the heartbeat of the South African economy. And obviously Altron's been, as you said now with Bill and the founding of Altron, very much part of that story. So what we've really done is we really feel that we've been part of building this city. So we want to really be part of the efforts to rebuild the city. So we partnered with Josie Majosi. They're a non-for-profit organization. You know them.
Visit Altron.com for more info. Altron, a technology industry leader since 1965.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
All right, let's get into the GNU conversation, shall we? So we want to speak about the future of the Government of National Unity. I've had very little sleep this week. I believe every other journalist who covers politics has struggled to get 8 hours of sleep in this week because it's been that chaotic, that frenzied as closed meetings happened to try and figure out what the way forward is for the Government of National Unity. I think we're in a bit of an impasse. I'm not sure. We'll hear from our experts. I've got on the line, joining me via Zoom, is Prince Mashele, a political analyst, Professor Kagiso Powe from the Wits School of Governance and digital politics editor for Times Live and Sunday Times, Lizeka Tandwa. I want to start with you, Lizeka. Good morning and welcome to Radio 702. Liz, let's speak about the week that we've all had as political journalists and what you've observed around this coalition government that's supposed to be taking the country forward.
Good morning, Tshidi, and good morning to your listeners. Thank you for having me. It doesn't feel like a week, does it, Tshidi, for us political journalists? It feels like it's been 3 months of us being in tenterhooks and the country being in tenterhooks over the instability of this GNU. And it's been a continuation since the Government of National Unity was formed. But in the last week, it's been about whether there is a crisis, whether there is going to be a reconfiguration, and whether the budget would be passed. We've seen the fiscal framework being passed in Parliament, albeit it's been without the DA, and that has presented a lot of problems for the government of national unity that is headed by President Cyril Ramaphosa. So it's been a rather tumultuous time, a time of uncertainty. What we know right now is that the ANC is currently in conversation with its political partners in the GNU and those who supported it from outside the GNU, primarily Action SA. And what is interesting for us is to see what's going to come out of those conversations. If I believe that, if I'm correct, the ANC is meant to have a discussion or negotiations with the DA on Friday or Saturday. And that's going to be interesting for us to see, is whether those negotiations will come out with something concrete and tangible for South Africans in terms of where we are going with this government of national unity. Not only that, where exactly do we stand as it pertains to the 0.5% VAT increase?
All right, thank you so much, Lizek. I do actually, before I forget, the lines are also open to you, listeners. You're more than welcome to put questions to our experts and ask them what they think. You can send voice notes or WhatsApps to 011-883-0702 if you want to call in and chat to our guests. 072-702-1702 if you want to put a question via WhatsApp or via a voice note. Prince, let me come to you now. Are we watching a standoff where we are waiting to see who will blink first? Is that the ideal way to characterize what's unfolding? I mean, there's small parties, but really, it generally feels that people are watching these two big bulls in the middle. That's ANC and DA, and wondering who blinks first. Is that a correct characterization of what's at play at the moment?
Thanks, Tshidi, for inviting me, and good morning to the listeners and to my colleagues. Here's my starting point. This government of national unity, we must keep this in mind, and we must never forget, whatever happens, including the latest impasse, is a government of strategic enemies. The biggest two components, that is the ANC and the DA, these are strategic enemies. They are in this government to weaken each other. That is what we must keep in mind all the time when we see all the dramas. The ANC wants to see the DA weakened from within the government of national unity. The DA also wants to see the ANC weakened from the government of national unity. That's number one. Number two, and I'm going to make three observations. Number two, so when we watch happenings in the government of national unity, we must know that there will always be frictions between the two major parties. The third point, and this relates to the latest impasse, the budget and so on, the DA here committed a tactical mistake, a big tactical mistake, and I think they will not recover from it. What is the tactical mistake committed by the DA? The DA, for the first time since 1994, got the ANC to postpone the delivery of a budget speech. We had never seen something like this before. Now, that was a huge victory on the part of the DA, and the rest of South Africa knew the ANC postponed that delivery of the speech because of the DA, because the DA objected to the 2% VAT hike. That was huge for the DA. Now, then the ANC was forced to step back, and it came back and said, we will now have a 1% VAT increase, and this is going to be spread across 2 years. And the DA insisted that was not enough. The DA should have accepted that tactical retreat by the ANC. If the DA had accepted that tactical retreat, this is what would have happened. It would have registered in the psychology of the ANC that there is no big decision that the ANC can take in the GNU without the DA approving of it. Now, what the DA has done by pushing the ANC into the corner, they have actually shown the ANC a back door that actually you can look outside the GNU to take decisions within the GNU. That's how Action SA comes into the picture. So going forward, the DA will be the weakest component of the GNU because the ANC now knows there is a back door. So the DA will emerge out of this, whether they decide to stay or to proceed within the GNU. They will emerge out of this the weakest party within the GNU. So that's where we are.
Sheesh, all right. Professor Kagisopoy, let's ask you about the issue of governance, of governing rules that they've put on the table. Because the ANC is supposedly pressing a reset button. It's revisiting its coalition partners. And as Lizaka pointed out, even those who helped them deal with the fiscal framework. But I don't understand why they're talking about rules today. Rules should have been part of the conversation much, much earlier, shouldn't it? Shouldn't they have immediately after the statement of intent sat down and actually discuss what the rules of engagement should be? Even, I suggest, establishing that clearinghouse. It shouldn't have happened when Bella happened. It almost feels like they are quite reactionary in the GNU about what needs to be done. Your thoughts on now hearing that they want to have rules?
No, good morning, and thanks for having me. I remember having this discussion with you in December. I think it was towards Christmas, so no one ever remembers. And I did say to you, we're going to come back and have the same conversation because the pertinent thing is what holds this thing together. And look, I know legally and contractually, there's nothing by law that can allow that to happen. But it was always the key issue that was the bane, I think, the weakness of this. And I call it, as I said, there's no such thing as a GNU. We have a grand coalition. There's always a strategic weakness. And what should have maybe been the gel that puts this together is, as I think Prince correctly says, look, you don't have to actually like each other. Very few professional working people like each other, but there is a thing called professional courtesy. And what should have been the glue that holds a lot of this together is what is the actual plan for the country? And I remember stating this, that they spoke about, listen, there's going to be a clearinghouse, there's going to be this and that. And even within that discussion, they could not have an agreement because the DA said, but listen, you owe us X amount of positions. The ANC basically roughshod them and said, this is what you will take. And then what we've been having ever since is everybody wants to look good towards their constituency. But the key overriding issue, which is always going to be the weakness, and I always want to frame this to say, I told you this in December, if there is no overriding plan about, listen, we don't like each other, but what do we actually do when we're governing? And what we've seen, I think for the last, going on to a year now, I think it's going to be a year in a few months' time, is there's been a strategic lack of direction about where is this country going in terms of the economy. You all know that's the crux of everything else. And you would have thought that the DA, because that's what they advertise themselves as being economic champions, would have been able to say, listen, ANC, on these issues, this is our red line. Because as we currently speak, we don't know what the red line is for the DA. Because it wasn't the issues of Bell. And I think those were past issues which they should have been more strategic about, what Prince is saying. To say, listen, they came from the previous administration. What you should have been fighting for is a tweak, not a simple change. But in losing that, it made them lose face. But I still want to maintain that, look, it doesn't mean that the ANC all of a sudden has got a clear road. Because even if they have found a backdoor being Action SA and the rest, it almost takes us back to the situation we find in local government, where the ANC, let's say the DA fully does withdraw. The ANC is then going to be fighting to see how do we get to the magical number of 202 for certain things. And if that's the case, is this going to be like another city of Joburg or city of Tshwane, where there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing, but you and I as a citizen, the economy, and also issues of municipal governance falling apart is not going to be rectified. So for me, it's actually a loss on both sides. And the key issue we should be asking now is, are we having coalitions that look more like Italy, France, and Lesotho? Or is it going to be an issue where we're going to be a UK type of coalition where there's going to be an ultimate loser? And that sometimes might torpedo in the next coming election an outright win. I don't think we'll ever get there this soon, but I think those are the key questions we should be asking and thinking about.
All right, thank you so much. Lizeka, I wonder if the ANC is painting itself in a corner. I don't know what your observations are, because what Professor Apo is pointing out is what we see at local government, where it's quite chaotic to get one thing done. Trying to have so many cooks in one kitchen, so to speak, is often actually problematic. And you don't actually want it at national level. Is the ANC painting itself into a corner? I mean, it's now has this issue with DA. They keep saying they've got issues with EFF. Some don't want to work with the EFF. They say they don't want to work with the MK. Are they not making it impossible for themselves to maneuver going forward?
I think you've put it out. You've pointed quite correctly to the concerns of the ANC. Tshidi. Most leaders of the ANC are quite concerned about the future of the party. Should they abandon this GNU, which includes the DA? With the DA, they have 2/3 majority, and if they abandon the DA, and I think that's why Fikile Mbalula was very cautious in his statement on Tuesday. In fact, he went off script because what he said was not in line with what the NWC statement said, which was quickly removed. And that statement talked about a reconfiguration of the GNU. And when he said, he said that we are pushing the reset button on the GNU. And I think that's foremost in the minds of the ANC is, how do we proceed without a majority in that parliament? The reality is that, they have put themselves in a corner. They have pushed themselves in a corner with whether they have Action SA in that GNU, whether they do have the 202 that they need. The reality is you don't know what is going to happen in the next months. You could have the same situation with other parties. And it's not only the DA that actually went against the ANC's budget. It is Freedom Front as well, one of the GNU partners. And without those two, you find yourself in a very precarious position as the ANC. And even if you bring in the EFF, which is unpredictable in itself, that presents a whole lot, another set of problems for the ANC. And I think that they're quite alive to that reality, that they're in a corner, that without the DA, they might have much more of an issue going ahead.
All right, thank you. Prince, I want to go back to the DA with you. I recognize that you're saying that they overplayed their hand, and I think there is a general perspective that the DA made a political play that didn't work. How do they unscramble the egg, if at all? You've spoken about what they should have done. They didn't do it. They are now in the situation where it almost feels to me that they're waiting to be fired, and then the NC simply won't do it. What does the DA do? Helen Zille is publicly saying that they'll fight a removal from the GNU. They've gone to the courts. Some of them are confident that the courts will give them the remedy to go back to the negotiation table, at least with some leverage. What is ideal for them to do to remedy the situation?
Look, the GNU is a political construct constituted on the basis of political considerations by separate parties, including the DA. It's not a legal construct. So there is no court that is going to solve the problems that are within the GNU. Ultimately, the DA must make political decisions about the GNU. So that's the first bottom line. The second thing, what can the DA do? My view is that the DA must stick to the GNU. They must wait to be fired by the ANC, by President Cyril Ramaphosa. They must not opt out. Because if the DA were to take a position to opt out, it would actually receive a backlash from society. I mean, my reading, and I may be wrong, but this is my reading. I think that the majority of South Africans actually support the GNU. Where do I get that? If you look at the numbers that constitute the GNU in terms of the electoral outcomes of the parties that participated last year, they constitute the majority. So, in other words, the GNU has the support of most South Africans. So, the party that is going to walk out, if the DA takes that risky decision of walking out, it will have to take a backlash from society. So, it must stay in there, number one. Number two, and the last point, is that they must make it clear to society what is it that they are willing to take from the ANC and what is it that they are not willing to take. The red lines, they must make us know what are their red lines. If we don't know their red lines, then they'll keep on jumping from one position to the other, but we actually don't know what will be the trigger that would inform them walking out of the GNU.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to pause there with my guests because it's 11:30. When I come back, though, we will go to some of your WhatsApps. I see the questions. I'll put it to them, and then we'll get more of their thoughts on the future of the Government of National Unity. But for now, here's Mongezi Koko with your headlines.
Thanks, Tshidi. Good morning. Tshwane Mayor Nasipi Moya is at this hour delivering her maiden State of the City address 6 months after assuming office. Moya is expected to present residents of the metro with her administration's key service delivery plans for the year ahead. Today's address comes at the backdrop of the DA's accusations that she is taking credit for the previous administration's work. Moya was elected to the position in October last year, and before that, she was deputy mayor for a year to her predecessor, Celia Brink. Brink says some of Moya's most recent successes were in part through the work of the previous DA-led coalition government. For the first time ever, South Africa's borders and ports will be monitored using drone technology. The utilization of drones, initiated as a pilot project in December last year at some of the country's ports of entry, resulted in a 215% prevention of illegal crossings, according to authorities. In a joint briefing with the Border Management Authority in Pretoria this morning, Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber unveiled 4 high-tech drones, which will be used by the BMA in securing some of the country's borders. And the judge in the Jocelyn Smith trial has taken a defense lawyer to task for insisting her client was asleep when police took his confession statement. A trial within a trial continues in the human trafficking case for the court to determine whether confession statements by 2 of the accused can be used as evidence by the state. Jocelyn's mother, Kelly Smith, Jaquina Polis, and Stefano van Rijn are charged with kidnapping and human trafficking in the Western Cape High Court, sitting in the Saldanha Bay Multi-Purpose Centre. Those are the headlines. There's eyewitness news and more at midday or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Centurion traffic remains heavily backed up heading towards Midrand. That's the N1 south between the R21 Flying Saucer interchange and Buerta Avenue. While in Selby, leaving the Joburg CBD, expect some delays M2 west between the Crown interchange and Main Reef Road. Otherwise, the rest of 702 land not looking too bad. No serious accidents have been reported on our highways. Just look out for those faulty traffic lights. Rand Park Ridge, Bayers Nodia, the N1 North. There's also traffic lights out of order in Bryanston at Winnie Mandela Drive and Sloan. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Looking for an MBA that works wherever you do? Henley Business School Africa offers the only international MBA in South Africa, backed by a global network of over 100,000 alumni, leaders in 155 countries. Ranked number 1 for alumni network potential, Henley gives you the connections, confidence, and capability to succeed locally and globally. This is your invitation to join a world of opportunity. Visit henleysa.ac.za.
Be in the right place at the right time with Betway's jackpot slots. Stand to win your share of millions of rands in cash every week. Bet 2 rand or more on selected slots every Thursday and Friday night between 7 and 10 p.m. and you could be our next big winner. The more you play, the more chances to win. Get way more only at Betway. Terms and conditions apply. Betway is licensed by the Mpumalanga Economic Regulator. No persons under the age of 18 are permitted to gamble. NRGP counseling line 0800 006 008. All events are fixed odds betting games.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. Victory demands everything, but the journey is never solo. My team carves the way, data and innovation are my compass. This is how today's champions are made.
Drive your success and trade like a champion. CFI, a global leading broker now in South Africa. Access over 15,000 instruments, advanced trading tools, 24/7 support, and superior trading services. Visit cfi.trade today. CFI Financial is an authorized financial services provider.
CFI, empower yourself.
Small business owners juggle a million roles in one. And that's what makes them 1 in a million. The 702 Small Business Awards, brought to you by MTN, asked you to tell us all about that one SME that just stands out. And this week, we're announcing the finalists on 702 Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa from 6 a.m. and 702 Drive with John Pullman from 3 p.m. Visit primemediaplus.com to find out more about the finalists in the 702 Small Business Awards, brought to you by MTN. T's and C's apply.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
It's 11:35. Tshidi Madia in for Clement Manyathela. It is a Thursday dialogue. We're discussing the future of the Government of National Unity. I'm joined via Zoom by Lizeka Tandwa from Sunday Times and Times Live, Professor Kagiso Poe from the Wits School of Governance and political analyst. I always say this political analyst is controversial. Prince Mashele, he's always, he's a stirrer. And we are discussing the GNU and where it's going. I do see your WhatsApps. I will put them to our experts to find out what they make and what they think of the way forward. Professor Poe, let me ask you about because you keep calling it a grand coalition, and you're right. I'm the one with the memory problem. I can't remember December's conversation, but you keep calling it a grand coalition. Is it a waste of time to then sit at the table with Action SA, make promises about a reconfiguration of the GNU? Is it waste of time and resources to engage with Action SA, especially because what also is hanging while all this is happening is governance? We don't know as a country whether we're headed to a cabinet reshuffle. Apparently, I'm making those claims and they're not true, but that's what we're facing.
Well, look, the way I'd look at it, and I think it kind of says maybe my December was a bit more boring than yours, so I was holding on to my...
Or maybe a day in covering politics is not
easy.
easy. That's why it's easy to forget things, yeah.
Yes, but I'll probably steal this point from Prince, if he doesn't mind me saying so. I think sometimes the framing of this has actually been incorrect. And the reason I want to keep it technical by saying a grand coalition is that it then puts things in let's put it in a political science manner, that you understand that when you say it's a grand coalition, you actually factor in the fact that, listen, there's going to be ups and downs. This is not a straight line. And unfortunately, the way the narrative was produced, and I think maybe this is where I'll make a bit of a retort against our media in general, that in believing and buying the idea of a government of national unity, the only framework and point of reference people have had is to say, oh, this is like 1994, but it's a bit different. It's not like 1994. It's a grand coalition that, if, as I say, you don't even have to go to the European countries, just go next door to Lesotho. Look at how Lesotho's coalitions have worked out. They're grand because of number, grand not because it's grand, but grand moreover because it's a complexity of the situation at hand. And if you understand it in that way, then you're able then to say, listen, what we then should be, and I think this is where maybe people who are political analysts or people who are policy specialists and even the media should be saying, we should not be that overly concerned with what I term the ups and downs, a bit like the stock exchange. We should be asking, what are the fundamental questions? And I think that's what we've been missing. If you start then framing this grand coalition and start asking fundamental questions, I think we become a bit more concerned, because it basically says, in a year, we've not moved. And that is very dangerous. And you only have to look at how we've handled foreign policy, how we're looking at local government. We are not moving. And I think that's what we should be doing. And then in reverse, what should then happen is we're then putting pressure on these political elites to say, listen, you need to grow up. We cannot be always on a Sunday, on a Monday, having shows about whether you guys are getting along or not getting along. What are you giving us in return? And I think the point of using the grand coalition framework is it's supposed to not only mature our political elites, but also mature the political debate within South Africa, such that we stop being citizens who are always at the behest of power, but start asking questions so that we can finally reverse the cycle and start putting pressure on them. Hence, I call it a grand coalition, with the hope that we start asking the better and the right questions going forward.
All right. Prince, I want to bring you in on that note. It hasn't done much. It still is a formation that many look to with the hope of what it means. It reminds me a lot of the Ramaphosa era, 2018, where the idea is this goodwill that you bestow upon whoever's in governance might move the needle, might shift us in a particular manner. Part of the outrage at the moment is fear of what might be, but we haven't had enough in under a year that's moved for you to believe that actually this formation will do something substantial to get the country out of the position that it's in at the moment.
Look, when this thing was formed, and I can hear Kagiso want us to be technical about political science concepts. I don't want to go down that route. When this thing was formed, I said this was the best arrangement under the circumstances, number one. Number two, I said it won't do much for the country. All it will do, it will serve as a shock absorber. And I want to stick to that observation. This expectation that this so-called government of national unity, I call it a government of strategic enemies, that it's going to do some wonders. It's going to deliver some big stuff. It's not going to happen. South Africans must keep that in mind. All it can do is to mitigate the damage that has been done by the ANC over the past 30 years. So what did we have before this so-called government of national unity? We had the ANC comrades sitting in some boardroom alone, taking decisions about our country. And if you look at the outcome of all of those decisions by the ANC comrades, you can see that the ANC comrades have actually destroyed our country. So the entry of the DA and other smaller parties into the boardroom, what it does, it stopped ANC comrades from stealing openly and from destroying our country further. That's all this GNU can do. The parties will never agree on some grand objectives because, as I said, they are there to weaken each other. They are not there to deliver some manna from heaven. We have to get that into our heads as a nation.
It's a struggle for South Africans. Let me go to the calls now. Nari in Blegari, good morning.
Yes, how are you?
I'm very good. You can put your question to the experts.
Yes, quickly, I heard Helen Sile, they are speaking about that the letter of intent where it says that they can, the GNU partners, I mean, they can, ANC cannot bring other partners without, without asking for a permission. And so what happened is they got this 60%. So the 60% thing is made up of ANC got 40 and the DA got 20. So it means that, and it says that the other smaller parties, they don't have leverage because they were not part of the first, that letter of intention. I think they were invited after. So I don't think so that ANC will be able to reconfigure and bring another party without the DA as well collapsing the government as well. That's what he says. I think, yes, I think there is that conflict. ANC doesn't have power that they can bring, because even if it's a verbal agreement, but in court it's legal binding because it was signed by Mbalula.
Okay, let me ask Lizeka to actually weigh in on this. Nara, thank you. That's Nara out in Blegari. Lizeka, that speaks to me almost about that issue of sufficient consensus, where the DA says we are the big parties, and almost speaks to Professor Boy's argument. But the ANC understands sufficient consensus completely differently about the amount of power each party that's signed into the GNU actually has. Helen's saying you can't do that outside of us. Is it possible, Liz? Is it not possible?
Well, the ANC seems to think that it is possible. In fact, I had a conversation with the chief whip of the ANC last week, where he said that if it's hypocritical for Helen Zille to point out that, there should be sufficient consensus within the GNU when they themselves, as the DA, have spoken publicly about not wanting to implement, the Expropriation Act, for instance, going to court against the Expropriation Act and now going to court against the budget, which they seem to interpret as going against, in breach of the statement of intent. So that's been the problem, which I said to you when I started, TD, is that this has been a continuous problem with both parties, where they've been interpreting the very document which they crafted together. They've interpreted it very differently, diametrically opposite in terms of what they see as the agreement. And in terms of going ahead with this, it will be very interesting. For me, what is interesting is what will come out of not the conversations that they will have today, yesterday, as well as on Friday with the other smaller parties which form part of the GNU, but the conversation that will be between the Helen Zille and Fikile Mbalula parties, negotiators, led by those two particular individuals. In terms of what Fikile Mbalula was saying, he was quite firm about, wanting to read the DA, the Riot Act, as it pertains to its decision to go against the cabinet, the budget which is approved by the cabinet, by its ministers, which have publicly stated that they would go against the executive orders of the president. And also the fact that the DA is now saying that they are going to reject the budget. So I think it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks for us as political journalists. But I think what Prince is saying about these two parties being strategic enemies and not really coming into this GNU wanting to progress the country is quite accurate. It was about some level of stability for themselves. It was for their own interests, and we can see it playing out. And even if you look at what people might criticize me, but if you look at even the demands of the DA when it was venturing into, we will reject the 0.5 percentage VAT, it wasn't necessarily about the 0.5 VAT. It was about the acts or the bills that were passed in the sixth administration. It was about their own interests. It was about their own manifestos, which speaks to overall the nature of this GNU.
All right, Lizaka, thank you for that. Kustas, good morning to you. Kustas out in Midrand.
Tshidi, I must say that I thank you for a wonderful conversation, by the way. I have been very disappointed with the DA in this GNU, in a sense that they have got regional mentality. They want to pull towards Western Cape. They want to pull things towards the Caucasians only. But also they don't talk to other parties in the GNU. That's fatalistic. But here's the question.
You hear about that a lot.
Here's the question. Isn't this now the time for the ANC, if I may ask your guests there, that they need to take out of the DA the basic education? Because if you want to achieve social cohesion in South Africa, basic education is at the center. The private schools in Midrand are overcompensated with Afrikaans and English, when the population around is actually Zulu, Tswana, and Venda, take your pick. So basic education sit at crossroads in whether we make this country a social cohesion or not. And the DA isn't keen on doing that. So why not pull that portfolio out of them, give it to Action SA, and they will drive the transformation, which that's what they also want. So that's my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Kustas. Professor Poe, I don't know if you can maybe speak to that. That speaks to the calls that we have been hearing for a cabinet reshuffle, but most importantly, for critical portfolios to be taken away from them.
Oh, look, I think we should not lose track of this fact that, listen, it's sort of as though the ANC arrived here by chance. The ANC arrived here because of poor performance. So it's one thing to look. You can hold the DA for the strategic weaknesses, and I think the call actually pointed out a critical one, which many people have been saying, even political parties, that the DA is very bad at playing with other people. One could even make the argument the ANC is actually a better coalition partner in terms of listening to other parties than the DA, which maybe speaks to the fact that the DA, much like the ANC, has a bit of arrogance about it, but the ANC has put itself in this situation where the economy has been tanking. And when you look at he speaks about basic education. It's one thing to look at Midrand. Let's look at rural areas in South Africa. Let's look at townships in South Africa. The ANC has done an abysmal job of making sure that those schools are up and running. Even here within higher education, the cuts that have been coming within higher education. So we should never simply just make this say, well, you know what, because the DA is behaving badly, it must mean the ANC must do more. No. We're in this mess because the ANC has not done its job. What we should be asking is the key question to say, and this is where I think, as I said, looking at the future, because look, the mess we're in at the moment, if you look at policy, if you look at the indicators, it's not going to take a year, it's not going to take two. We're literally looking at 10 or 15 years of trying to fix South Africa. So what I'm trying to maybe posit towards, if we're going to be stuck in this thing of grand coalitions, is to say, what's going to be done differently that has not been done in the last 30 years? Because if you're simply saying, let's improve on the stuff that we did in the last 30 years, well, this is a mess that we got ourselves into. And I think, and this is maybe the critical issue, I don't think we have a culture or a political elite that is up to standard to be able to get us to where we need to get to. And part of it, I think, also comes from ourselves as citizens, that we don't put forward the best among ourselves. I always use this simple example. If you look at the period between 1999 and all the way, maybe 2007, 2008, one can make the argument that it was the best, give or take death aside, the best of that generation could give us. Subsequent to that, we all know if we literally took the best and brightest in this country, within 5 or 7 years we could fix this. But unfortunately, because we don't have those things, and the best way to put it, especially for the ANC, is the ANC does not have a Deng Xiaoping, the man who reformed China completely. So to expect them to do anything differently to what they know, it's not going to get us there. And the DA is also proving itself to be a bit unable to work with others and actually give South Africans a different picture of what the future could be, because we still hold them to what, unfortunately, they are currently doing and proving what people don't like about them.
Equally weak political parties, actually. I had met Barbara Masekela in studio just before this conversation, and the messages I kept getting about the vacuum, that listening to her makes you realize the caliber of people who helped lead the transformation and the democratic breakthrough versus who we are today. I think that is a fundamental issue that many people have raised. I want to go to some of the WhatsApps and voice notes now. Abel? Do you have voice notes? No? Yes? No? Please.
No, good morning and good morning to your guest. I totally disagree with the view of Prince when he says that the majority South Africans are in for the GNU. That is totally incorrect. It is totally incorrect. I think this is a marriage of coincidence between the ANC and the DA. You know, we might disagree to agree that the ANC in this GNU represents its political interest as much as the DA. So what is unfolding before us as South African is that this is a left-wing and the right-wing opposition.
Tshidi, good morning. It's Israel here, Krugazov. I just wanted to find out, could you please ask Prince Mashele that what's going to happen now should the ANC decide to sort of let the DA go, or the DA if they decide to go. Otherwise, if they do decide to stay, Tshidi, how would their ministers implement the the budget that they didn't vote for? So, how is this whole thing going to unfold? It's very interesting. We're living in a very interesting time. But yeah, I just wanted to know whether they go or they stay. But what would happen definitely? If they do stay, and then would they still be able to implement those? They use the budget that they didn't want to vote for? Or else, if they do go, do you think, Action SA and Bosa and probably whoever, will they be able to, to fill up that gap that DA left? I'll listen on the radio. A great show as always, City. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you so much, Prince. I think you've got that loud and clear. What happens if they do go, if they don't go, or rather, there was meant to be a cabinet meeting today. It was called off, and I don't want to lie to you. I wasn't convinced about the reasons. Yeah, we get cancellations every day. Part of the cabinet members themselves were saying to me, it's going to be so awkward having to put up with each other. So then it's cancelled. We're given a whole myriad of reasons. But trying to work together, Prince, going forward. I think I saw yesterday, Dean McPherson and Sisisi Tolash at an event. I thought, if only they could actually be like this. Your thoughts about what happens if they both refuse to budge and then they remain in the GNU and in government?
Well, let me start by warning Kahi so that if he calls for the best to be in our parliament, his head is going to be chopped off like mine. Recently, I said we shouldn't have uneducated people in parliament.
No, Prince. It was how you put it. Even I know that you were wrong.
Yeah, that's fine. I just to warn my friend Kahi. But I think on a more serious note, look, here are the options ahead of us as a country, given where we are. Option number one, it's for cool heads on the part of the DA and the ANC to prevail and say, let's go back to the GNU. That's option number one. There are implications for that option. if they go back to the GNU, given what has happened, we must expect that the GNU is going to be a weaker entity. We must not expect big stuff to come from it. That's option number one. And it's a better option, by the way, in my view. Option number two, it's for the
I think there's something going on with his line there. But I am also running out of time. Prince, are you back up? Hold on. Prince?
Hello?
I think I've got
Hello?
you now. You can go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying option number two, it's for the DA to walk out of the GNU out of its own volition or to be kicked out of the ANC. So if we have that option playing itself out, the ANC would most likely bring in more smaller parties such as Action SA to have a slight majority in parliament. And we have seen that that can actually work in terms of securing votes. But that option also would not be stable because the smaller parties along the way would try to play their hands in order to extract political profit out of that arrangement. So those are the two options that are in front of us. At the end of the day, after we have spoken, I can guarantee you, you will get either of the two. But the bottom line is that we must expect to have a weaker government of South Africa for the next 20 years. Because there is no party in the next 20 years that is going to emerge as a majority electorally. So we must get used to this chaos. What are we going to do to develop leadership so that we mitigate this in the long term? That is the strategic question for South Africa.
All right, I want to leave it at that. Thank you so much. I have run out of time. Like, the clock has been running away from me. I was joined there by Prince Mashele, political analyst, Professor Kagiso Powe from the Vet School of Governance, and Lisa Katandwa, who's the digital politics editor for Times Live and the Sunday Times. I think it's about us, right? We need to think about what is best for our country. Because if you listen to all of them, there's nothing to look forward to as far as the political leadership is concerned. I'm going to leave it there.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Are you ready to take control of your financial future? With personalized solutions tailored to your audacious goals. African Bank is more than just a bank. We are your partner in progress. Because when you grow, we grow. Join the bank that backs you. Visit our branch or go online to join. African Bank, audacity to believe. African Bank Limited is an authorized financial services and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
When it comes to corporate travel, South African Airways knows what you need. SAA services are designed specifically for the business traveler. Experience competitive rates, flexible travel options with waived change fees, and fully refundable and flexible tickets for a hassle-free journey. SAA dedicated key account management means your travel needs are meticulously handled every step of the way. Plus, earn Voyager miles on every trip and relax in our luxurious business class lounges. South African Airways, where your travel needs are our priority. We don't just fly you, we prioritize your travel needs. Visit flysaa.com or call your nearest travel agent to tailor your corporate travel experience. South African Airways, transforming business travel.
Join us.
Let's walk the talk.
This is 702.
Coming up next is the Midday Report with Mandy Wiener, who's coming to you live from Cape Town. Good afternoon, Mandy. What's coming up on the show? I don't have Mandy up, but she will be up in just a bit. I'm pretty sure she'll also be speaking to the Transport MEC, right? Remember earlier I was speaking about what's going on with the taxis. Mandy, do I have you now? No matter. Mandy's got your updates between 12 and 1, the midday report coming to you from Cape Town. After her, of course, you'll have Relebogile Mabota, will be followed by John Perlman. I think that issue of taxis, even the GNU, mind you, I'll be on the other side telling you about the GNU and what happens next. I see that the PAC has already met with the ANC. So that story will continue being told in Eyewitness News. I'm pretty sure Mandy will also have an update on what's happening there, as well as what's happening as far as the violence with the taxis in the province. Almost 30 people, over 30 people died, have been killed on our roads because of that. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. It's now 12 o'clock. Here's your news updates.
This is EWN.
Good afternoon, I'm Munki Zikoko. The Tshwane municipality says it's looking to revive some of its state-owned assets which have been long labelled as white elephants. This includes the loss-making Wonderboom Airport, the decommissioned Pretoria West and Rooiwal power stations, and the Tshwane Event Centre, among others. Today, Tshwane Mayor Nasiphi Moya delivered her first State of the City address 6 months after being appointed the capital's first citizen. Moya says that rather than selling off the city's assets, her administration is committed to revitalizing them.
This city is fortunate to have an asset